My wife spent over 40 hours crocheting a beautiful handmade shawl for the woman marrying the brother who made her childhood a living hell. The moment that shawl was in their hands, they uninvited her from the wedding. So I walked back into that office and took it right off his desk. My wife Lena was asked by her own mother to make this gift for her older brother George's fiancée Diane. They used Lena for her talent, then discarded her like she was nothing, and when I took the shawl back, the entire family turned on us. But they weren't expecting her brother Michael to pick a side too, and they definitely weren't expecting what happened at that reception. So here's the cast. I'm a guy in my late 30s. My wife is Lena. Her older brother is George. His new wife is Diane. Their mother is Vivian. And then there's Michael, Lena's other brother, and his wife Sarah, the only two people in that family who ever actually saw Lena. To understand what happened, you need to understand what Lena's childhood looked like. Because this wasn't a one-time slight. This was a pattern so deeply grooved into her family's behavior that they didn't even see it as cruelty anymore. They saw it as normal. When George graduated from uni, Lena was left at home. She was 8 years old and left home alone all day. Not with a neighbor, not with a babysitter, just left. The whole family, Vivian, George, grandparents, aunts, uncles, they all went to the ceremony, the dinner, the celebration, and Lena sat in an empty house watching cartoons until it got dark and she got scared enough to lock the front door herself. Christmas was spent mostly in her bedroom because her grandmother didn't want Lena around as her presence would just upset George. I need you to read that again. A child was told her presence times was upsetting, not her behavior, not something she did. Her existence in her room was treated as a provocation. So she'd sit upstairs with whatever book she could find while the rest of them opened presents and ate together downstairs until she was 14. Then she would sneak out and spend it with me and my family. That's how I met Lena. She was the girl from 2 streets over who showed up at our door on Christmas Day in a coat that was too thin, holding a tin of biscuits she'd made herself, asking my mom if she could watch telly with us. My mom didn't ask questions that first year. She just pulled up a chair. Lena was just left out of everything. Her dad used to work away from home a lot, so he had no idea what was going on. He just assumed Lena liked being on her own, that she was the quiet type, the independent one. That's the story, Vivian told him. And by the time he figured out the truth years later, after a breakdown Lena had at 19, the damage was architectural. It was load-bearing. You couldn't remove it without the whole thing coming down. George was the golden child. George got the attention, the investment, the protection, and Lena got what was left, which was usually nothing. So when Vivian called 3 months ago and asked Lena to crochet a shawl for Diane, George's fiancée, I watched my wife's face do something I've seen 100 times. This flicker. Hope, then suppression of hope, then a careful neutral expression she's perfected over 37 years of practice. Mom wants me to make something for the wedding, she said, and her voice was light in the way that means it isn't. I didn't say what I wanted to say. I said, "Do you want to?" She said yes. Of course she said yes. She picked out yarn herself. Drove to 3 different shops to find the exact shade of ivory that would match Diane's dress. She watched tutorials for a stitch pattern she'd never tried before, something intricate with a scalloped edge that made her hands cramp after 20 minutes. She worked on it every evening for weeks. I'd come downstairs at midnight and find her on the sofa with her reading glasses on, counting stitches under her breath, and I'd bring her tea and sit with her because I didn't know what else to do. 40 hours. That's what she put into it. 40 hours of her life poured into a gift for a woman she'd met twice, marrying a man who once locked her in a garden shed for 4 hours because she touched his PlayStation controller. The plan was simple. George and I work at the same company, different teams, but same building. Lena didn't want to see him, so Vivian arranged for me to hand the shawl to George at work. Fine, I could do that. I could be civil for 90 seconds. That Monday morning, I found George in the break room. I handed him the bag. Inside was the shawl wrapped in tissue paper with a handwritten card from Lena that said, "Times, wishing you both a beautiful day. With love, Lena." Asterisk. George looked in the bag, nodded, and said, "Tell her thanks." Not Times, thank Lena. Asterisk. Not Times, that's really kind of her. Asterisk. Just Times, tell her thanks. Asterisk. Like I was a courier. I went back to my desk. I did my work. I ate lunch. Normal Monday. Then at 1:30, my phone rang. Lena's voice was doing that thing again. Light in the way, that means it isn't. Diane just called. She said they've had to cut the guest list because of space at the venue, so we're not invited anymore. My hand tightened around the phone. She said she's really sorry and she hopes I understand. I could hear Lena breathing. Controlled. Measured. The breathing of someone who has practiced not crying in front of people since she was old enough to understand that her tears made things worse. When did she call? I asked. About 20 minutes ago. 20 minutes. The shawl had been in George's hands for 5 hours. They waited just long enough to make sure they had it, and then they made the call. I sat at my desk and I felt something settle in my chest. Not anger, not yet. Clarity. Cold, absolute clarity. They never wanted Lena at that wedding. They wanted the shawl. They wanted 40 hours of her hands and her heart and her desperate hope that maybe this time would be different, and then they wanted her gone. I told Lena I loved her. I told her I'd be home soon. Then I stood up, walked down the corridor to George's department, and looked at his desk. Empty chair. He'd already left for the day. But sitting right there on the corner of his desk, still in the bag, tissue paper spilling out, was the shawl. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds. A colleague glanced up. I didn't care. I picked up the bag, pulled a sticky note from George's own dispenser, and wrote 4 words times, "You don't deserve this," asterisk. I stuck it to his monitor, walked out of the building, and drove home with my wife's shawl on the passenger seat. By the time I pulled into our driveway, the family group chat had already detonated. The group chat was already 40 messages deep by the time I walked through the front door. Lena was sitting at the kitchen table with her phone face down, both hands wrapped around a mug she wasn't drinking from. She looked up when I came in and her eyes went straight to the bag in my hand. "You took it back," she said. "Not a question." I took it back. She pressed her lips together. Her chin did that trembling thing she hates, the one she's been fighting since she was small enough to be sent to her room for having feelings. Then she nodded, once stood up and put her arms around me, and I held my wife in our kitchen while her phone buzzed against the table like something alive and furious. I picked it up. She let me. Vivian had written times that shawl was a gift. You don't give something and take it back. That's not how family works. Asterisk. George times Lena needs to grow up. This is embarrassing. Asterisk. Diane times. I can't believe this is happening 2 weeks before our wedding. We tried to be kind about the guest list, and this is what we get. Asterisk. Then Vivian again times. And I don't want the children thinking this behavior is acceptable. Maybe they should stay with us that weekend so they're not around all this negativity. Asterisk. My jaw locked. She was reaching for our kids now, using them as leverage the way she'd always used, proximity as a weapon, granting it, withholding it, dangling it, like something Lena had to earn. I started typing. Asterisk. This is Lena's husband. Lena didn't take the shawl. I did. She doesn't know I'm writing this, and she'd probably tell me to stop, because that's who she is. Someone who has spent her entire life being gracious to people who don't deserve it. The shawl took her 40 hours. She drove to 3 shops to match the color. She stayed up until midnight every night for weeks. And the morning I handed it over, you waited 5 hours to uninvite her. You got what you wanted and you threw her away. Again. So yes, I took it back. And no, you're not having our children for the weekend. Or any weekend. Asterisk. I put the phone down. Lena was reading over my shoulder. She didn't stop me. The chat went quiet for 11 minutes. I counted. Then Michael. Asterisk. He's right. Asterisk. 2 words. And then times I've watched this my whole life and I've said nothing and I'm done saying nothing. George, you know exactly what you did. Mom, you know exactly what you've always done. Sarah and I won't be at the wedding. Asterisk. Vivian's response was, instant times. Michael, don't you dare. Asterisk. George, times. Are you serious right now? Over a shawl. Asterisk. Michael times. It was never about the shawl, George. You know that. Asterisk. Then Michael went offline. So did we. The wedding was on a Saturday. Michael texted me that morning times, taking the girls to the aquarium. Lena and the kids should come. Asterisk. So that's what we did. The 6 of us, me, Lena, R2, Michael, and Sarah, spent the afternoon watching penguins and eating overpriced chips in a cafe that smelled like chlorine and vinegar. Michael's daughter put a plastic starfish clip in Lena's hair, and Lena wore it for 3 hours. Sarah took a photo of all of us outside the gift shop, everyone mid-laugh, because Michael had just walked into a bollard while trying to read the parking sign. Michael posted it that evening. No caption, just the photo. Time-stamped during the wedding reception. I found out later through Sarah, who heard it from a cousin, that George saw it mid-speeches. That he went white, then red, then excused himself from the top table. That Vivian followed him. That there was a scene in the corridor outside the function room that George's new in-laws absolutely witnessed. That Diane's father asked Vivian quite directly what was going on, and Vivian couldn't produce an answer that made sense because the truth times, my daughter wasn't invited to her own brother's wedding because we only needed her for the handmade gift times isn't something you can dress up for strangers. George's reception was ruined. Not by us, by the architecture of 37 years of cruelty finally becoming visible to people who hadn't been trained to look away. The following Monday, I requested a transfer to a different team. My manager didn't ask why. He just looked at me for a moment, said, "Probably wise," and approved it that afternoon. He'd seen the sticky note. He'd heard enough. Michael told us later that week that the venue had a capacity of 140. George and Diane had 93 guests. The space issue was a lie so thin you could read through it. I didn't tell Lena that people online were calling her a doormat or saying she needs to grow a spine. Those people clearly haven't had their spirit completely broken by the people who are meant to love them unconditionally. They haven't been 8 years old, left home alone all day while the whole family celebrates without them. They haven't spent Christmas in their bedroom because their grandmother decided their existence was a provocation. Lena apologized to me. That's the part that still sits in my chest like a stone. She apologized for times being upset, asterisk. She thanked me for taking the shawl back. She said, "I'm sorry, this is all so messy." I told her she had nothing to apologize for. I told her she never had. We went no contact with George, Diane, and Vivian. Changed the locks because Vivian has a key. Blocked numbers. The silence has been strange and clean like the air after a storm pulls through. The shawl is still here. Lena soaked it in indigo dye last weekend, turned it from ivory to this deep, rich blue that makes it look like something entirely new. She's planning to wear it to Christmas at Michael and Sarah's. She had previously suggested that I could wear it too to work when George is back. She was laughing when she said it, actually laughing. I'm going to bring up therapy soon. Not yet. The dust is still settling and she's sleeping through the night for the first time in weeks and I don't want to push. But soon. For 37 years, Lena's family treated her like she was optional. Like she was someone who existed in the margins of their lives, useful when she could produce something invisible when she couldn't. She's not invisible anymore. Not to Michael. Not to Sarah. Not to our kids who will never sit in a bedroom alone on Christmas Day wondering what they did wrong. And not to me. Never to me. My sister-in-law sat across from me at dinner, looked me dead in the eyes, and told me she'd be taking my 3-month-old baby home with her during the week so she could finally be a mother. And she wasn't joking. What started as years of quiet tension over her infertility exploded into a full psychiatric crisis after she watched me breastfeed my son, and within weeks she was involuntarily committed after telling her psychiatrist. Things so alarming. They classified her as an active danger to me and my baby. Then, in our second story, a mother-in-law who works at the DMV decided to forge her own son's signature and slap her name on a car title that wasn't hers. So, I'm 36, married to Marcus, and Denise is his older sister. Craig is Denise's husband, and Patricia is my mother-in-law. In the second story, I'm 24, my fiancé is Derek, and his mother Lorraine works at the DMV, which she apparently thinks makes her above the law. Denise and I were never close, but we were civil. For 10 years, we shared holidays, swapped birthday gifts, and kept the kind of peace that holds a family together when two people simply don't click. The tension was always there, low-grade humming beneath every interaction, but I understood where it came from, and that understanding kept me patient longer than most people would have been. Denise was diagnosed with unexplained infertility at 30. By the time she was 35, she and Craig had burned through 3 rounds of IVF, 2 failed adoptions, and what Craig once quietly told Marcus was close to $90,000. Every pregnancy announcement in the family landed on her like a physical blow. When I had my first child, my daughter, now 4, Denise didn't come to the hospital. She sent flowers. Nobody blamed her. Grief makes people do strange things, and absence is one of the kinder options. But something shifted when I got pregnant with my son. Denise started calling more. Texting. Showing up at the house unannounced with baby clothes she'd bought. Neutral colors, expensive brands, tags still on. She asked to come to my ultrasound. She asked to be in the delivery room. Each request came wrapped in this desperate sweetness that made my stomach clench because I could see what was happening even if nobody else wanted to name it. She wasn't celebrating my pregnancy. She was auditioning for a role in it. Marcus told me I was reading too much into it. Patricia said Denise was finally healing. Craig said nothing, which I now realize was its own kind of alarm. My son was born in February. Healthy, perfect mind. Denise visited the hospital the day after delivery, held him for 40 minutes, and cried the entire time. Not quiet tears, deep shaking, sobs that made the nurses look at each other. When I gently took him back to feed him, she stood up and left without saying goodbye. 3 months passed. Denise pulled back again, fewer texts declined, 2 family dinners. Then Patricia organized a Sunday dinner at our house, insisted everyone come, said the family needed togetherness. I agreed because I was exhausted in choosing battles, and this one didn't seem worth fighting. Denise arrived with a diaper bag, not a purse. A fully stocked diaper bag, diapers, wipes, a change of clothes, formula, a pacifier for a baby she didn't have. I noticed it the second she walked in, and the hair on my arms stood straight up. Marcus didn't see it. Patricia didn't see it. Craig saw it. I watched his face go white, watched him lean into Denise and whisper something, watched her shake him off with a sharp jerk of her shoulder. Dinner was fine for the first 20 minutes. Normal conversation, my daughter showing Denise her drawings, Craig complimenting the food. Then my son started fussing in his bassinet. I picked him up, settled into the corner of the couch, and started breastfeeding. I'd done this 100 times in front of family. It was nothing. Denise went still. Not quiet time still, asterisk. Like something behind her eyes locked into place. She stared at my son, latched to my breast with an intensity that made me angle my body away from her instinctively. The room kept talking. Nobody noticed. I noticed. Then she spoke. "I've been thinking," she said, and the table conversation died. "It would be really good for the baby if he spent weekdays with me and Craig. I could create a real motherly bond with him. You'd still have weekends." Silence. The kind of silence that has weight. "Denise," Craig said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We talked about this." "No times you times talked," she said, not breaking eye contact with me. "I'm talking now. It's only fair. You have 2. I have none. That's not balanced, and everyone at this table knows it. My daughter was sitting 3 feet away coloring. My son was still nursing. My hands were shaking, but my voice came out flat and hard in a way I didn't recognize. That is never going to happen. You don't get to decide that alone," Denise said. "Marcus, Patricia, this is a family decision." Marcus put his fork down. "Denise, you need to stop." "Why?" "Because she said so." Denise's voice cracked. "She gets everything. She gets times, everything times, and I get nothing. And nobody in this family has ever once, get out of my house." I said it while still holding my son, still feeding him. My body hadn't moved, but something in my face must have, because Craig was already standing, already reaching for Denise's arm. "We're leaving," Craig said. "Denise, now." She grabbed the diaper bag on her way out. That detail kept me up for 3 nights straight. Craig called Marcus at midnight. What he told us made my blood run cold. 2 nights before the dinner, Denise had tried to leave the house at 3 a.m. Craig found her in the car engine running, repeating that she needed to check on her baby. He'd also found her browser history, dozens of searches on how to induce lactation without pregnancy, how to establish custody of a relative's child, and how long a baby could survive on formula if the mother wasn't present. Craig was sobbing on the phone. He said he'd already made an appointment with a psychiatrist. The earliest opening was 10 days out. He was scared. He was sorry. He didn't know what she was becoming. Patricia moved into Craig and Denise's house the next morning. Not to visit, to watch. I changed every lock in our house, installed cameras on both doors, and called my daughter's preschool to update the pickup authorization list. Marcus handled it like Marcus handles everything, steady, methodical, quietly terrified underneath. We didn't sleep in the same rhythm for a week. One of us was always awake, always listening. Then the psychiatrist appointment finally came, and what Denise said in that room changed everything. Craig called Marcus on a Tuesday afternoon, which was unusual because Craig never called during work hours. Marcus stepped out of the kitchen. He runs a small catering operation, the kind that keeps your hands busy and your phone on silent, and came back 11 minutes later, looking like someone had hollowed him out from the sternum down. "The psychiatrist is requesting an emergency evaluation," he said. Denise told her she has a plan. A plan for what? Marcus sat down at the table across from me. Our son was sleeping in the next room. Our daughter was at preschool. The house was quiet enough to hear the cameras click through their rotation cycle on the front porch monitor. She told the psychiatrist that she'd been chosen to raise our son, that I would eventually agree because I'd see it was right. That you were, he stopped, swallowed, that you were an obstacle and that obstacles get removed. My hands went to the table. Flat. Pressing down. Like if I didn't anchor myself to something solid, I'd come apart at the molecular level. She said that to a doctor in a session. She said it calmly. Craig said the psychiatrist told him Denise presented it like a logical argument. Step 1, step 2, step 3. She had times, contingencies, times, Marcus said. For if Craig didn't cooperate. For if Patricia sided with us. For if I didn't give him up. Marcus nodded. He couldn't say it again. The psychiatrist, Dr. Alana Voss, a name I will never forget, made the call that afternoon. Under state law, when a mental health professional determines a patient poses an imminent danger to a specific individual, they don't ask permission, they act. Doctor, Voss contacted the county crisis team. By 6 o'clock that evening, Denise was involuntarily committed to an inpatient psychiatric facility on a 72-hour hold that was extended within 48 hours to a minimum of 14 days. Craig called us from the facility parking lot. He wasn't sobbing this time. He was past that. His voice had the flat, scraped-out quality of a man who just watched his wife escorted through locked doors while she screamed his name. "She thinks I betrayed her," he said. "She thinks this is proof that the whole family is conspiring against her." "Craig," I said, "because Marcus couldn't? You saved her life. And you might have saved my son's?" He hung up without responding. The next 72 hours were mechanical. I called the preschool again, not just to update the pickup list, but to provide Denise's photo and a physical description. I called our pediatrician's office and flagged the file. Marcus installed a deadbolt on the nursery door, which is something no parent should ever have to do, and something I stared at every single night while feeding my son at 2 a.m, wondering what kind of world requires a lock between a baby in the hallway of his own home. Patricia drove back and forth between the facility and Craig's house, like a woman running a supply line in wartime. She brought Craig meals, she brought Denise books and a blanket from home. She called me once on day 4 and said I failed her. I saw the signs and I called it healing because that was easier. I didn't argue with her. She was right. Marcus and I had the conversation every couple dreads, the one where you sit across from each other after the kids are asleep and say the quiet thing out loud. When she gets out, I said, "She's not coming near this house. Ever. Ever. And holidays, birthdays, Patricia's." Marcus pressed his palms against his eyes. I don't know yet. But our kids come first. They come before Denise's feelings, before Craig's guilt, before my mother's need to hold this family together with both hands. Your sister is sick, Marcus. My sister described removing you like a task on a checklist. That's not sick in a way that earns her access to our children. That's sick in a way that means the door stays locked. He was right. I hated that he was right. We won't be moving. It's not feasible for us at the moment, but we have taken extra steps with security both at home and at the kitchen. This whole thing has taken a toll on my family, but Patricia, Craig, and the treatment team are taking care of Denise, and Marcus and I are focused on ensuring the safety of our immediate family and minimizing the effect on the kids as much we can. My daughter asked me last week why Aunt Denise doesn't come to dinner anymore. I told her Aunt Denise is getting help from some very good doctors. She accepted that the way 4-year-olds accept most things completely temporarily, with the unspoken promise of asking again later. My son is 5 months old now. He laughs when his sister makes faces at him. He grabs my hair when I carry him. He has no idea that someone mapped out a plan to take him from me with the calm precision of someone organizing a grocery list. I grieve for Denise. I do. I grieve for the woman who sent flowers when she couldn't bring herself to visit the hospital because that woman was surviving her pain without converting it into someone else's nightmare. That woman is gone now, or buried under something I am not qualified to excavate. It's an incredibly sad situation for both parties, and unfortunately, it's a reality for a lot of families out there. Infertility breaks people in ways that don't always look like breaking. Sometimes it looks like love misdirected and metastasized until the person carrying it can't tell the difference between wanting a child and wanting. Asterisk yours, asterisk. The deadbolt stays on the nursery door. The cameras stay on. Patricia stays in Craig's guest room. And I stay awake, one ear always tuned to the monitor, listening for sounds that don't belong in my house. The family survives. But the version of it that existed before that Sunday dinner, the one held together by civility and willful blindness, and the quiet agreement to never name what was growing in Denise's silence, that family is gone. We're building a different one now. Smaller, fortified, scarred in places that won't fully heal. But mine? Seven years. I gave this woman 7 years, 4 of them long distance, and the night that finally broke everything open started with her saying she was going for a walk at 1 a.m. A walk. Let me tell you how a single lie at 1 a.m. unraveled my entire life, exposed an affair with a coworker, and ended with her standing in our apartment saying the 5 words, "No one ever recovers from cleanly. I wanted to cheat on you." Then she topped it, told me there were other guys too. Maybe that part was true, maybe she said it just to destroy me. Honestly, I still don't know which answer is worse. I'm a guy in my early 30s. My ex-girlfriend is Nicole, she's 29. And the coworker she was sneaking out to see at 4 in the morning, that's Derek. To understand how that 1 a.m. walk destroyed everything, you need to understand what I'd already survived to get there. Nicole and I met when we were 23 and 25. The first 3 years were close proximity, same city, same circle, the kind of relationship where you build rhythms without thinking about it. Then her family situation pulled her back to her home state, and we made the decision together we'd do long distance. We'd make it work. People said we were crazy. 4 years of crazy. 4 years of flights I couldn't afford. 4 years of FaceTime dates where the lag made us talk over each other and laugh about it. 4 years of sleeping alone and convincing myself the empty side of the bed was temporary. I turned down a job in another city because it would have added 2 more hours of travel between us. I said no to nights out, to trips with friends, to the kind of life a guy in his mid-20s is supposed to be living because I was building something. We were building something. When she finally moved in, I remember carrying her last box through the door and just standing in the kitchen looking at her unpacked mugs thinking, times we made it. Asterisk. The hard part was over. That delusion lasted about 5 months. The shift was subtle at first. Nicole started a new job almost immediately after relocating, which made sense. She needed income, needed a social circle outside of me. I encouraged it. She'd come home talking about coworkers, office dynamics, the usual. One name started surfacing more than others. Derek. Derek said this funny thing. Derek and I grabbed lunch. Derek thinks I should push for that promotion. I didn't flinch. I'm not the jealous type. I'd spent 4 years trusting this woman across state lines. I wasn't about to start policing her friendships 10 feet away. But something else was happening that had nothing to do with Derek. Nicole stopped touching me. Not dramatically, not overnight. Just the hand on my back while I cooked disappeared. The way she used to fold into me on the couch became her sitting on the opposite end. I'd reach for her in bed, and she'd already be turned toward the wall. I told myself she was adjusting. New city, new job, new everything. Give her space. Then came the night. We'd argued about something stupid, dishes I think, or maybe who forgot to grab groceries. The kind of fight that means nothing on the surface and everything underneath. I was tired of fighting, so I went to bed around 11. Woke up at 1 a.m. to the glow of her phone in the hallway. She was putting on shoes. Where are you going? Just a walk. I need air. I almost rolled over. Almost. Something in my chest wouldn't let me. I stayed awake. She didn't come back until 4. Here's the thing about our apartment. We had a doorbell camera. Ring camera pointed right at the front entrance. When I checked the footage the next morning, she hadn't come through the front door when she returned. She'd come through the side entrance of the building, the one without a camera, at 4 a.m. After a 3-hour walk, my hands were shaking when I asked her about it at breakfast. Not from anger yet. From the thing that comes before anger, that full-body recognition that the ground beneath you is not solid. I walked around the neighborhood, then sat in my car for a while. For 3 hours. I needed to think. You avoided the doorbell camera. Her coffee mug stopped halfway to her mouth. Just for a second. Then she recovered. I came in the side because I didn't want to wake you with a notification. Consider it. Except she'd never once used the side entrance in 5 months of living there. Over the next 2 weeks, that story shape-shifted like something alive. The walk became a drive. The drive became, I stopped by a friend's place. The friend became a coworker. The coworker became Derek. We just talk, babe. He's someone I can vent to about stuff. About us? Sometimes. Yeah. My stomach dropped through the floor. She was outsourcing our relationship to the guy she was sneaking out to see at 1 a.m. Then she did something that made no sense, unless it made perfect sense. Nicole put in her 2 weeks' notice at work. No new job lined up. No explanation that held weight. Just suddenly, urgently needed to leave the place where Derek was. I knew. My body knew before my brain would admit it. I took her phone one night while she was in the shower. I'm not proud of it. But I'd spent 7 years being proud and trusting and patient. And all it had earned me was a woman who used the side door at 4 a.m. What I found in those messages wasn't ambiguous. It wasn't just venting. It was explicit. It was ongoing. It was everything. When she came out of the bathroom, hair wrapped in a towel, she saw her phone in my hand and the color drained from her face like someone had pulled a plug. "Sit down," I said. She sat. "Tell me the truth, or I promise you, Nicole, I will never speak to you again." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, and what came out over the next 48 hours would rewrite every memory I had of us. She confessed in layers like someone pulling off a bandage 1 millimeter at a time, hoping I'd tell her to stop. First, it was just an emotional connection. Then it was one kiss. Then the kiss happened more than once. Then it wasn't just kissing. Each revision came with a new round of tears. A new version of, "I'm so sorry." And I sat there on the edge of our bed, the bed I'd bought for Times Us. Times watching her construct and demolish her own lies in real time. By the second night, she'd admitted the full scope. It was an affair. Not a drunken accident, not a moment of weakness. A sustained, deliberate, ongoing affair with Derek that started roughly 6 weeks after she began working there. 6 weeks. She'd barely finished unpacking the mugs. Then something shifted behind her eyes. She realized what confession actually meant. It meant consequences. It meant she had no job. She'd already quit. No apartment. Her name wasn't on the lease. No friends in this city who weren't originally my friends. The math hit her all at once, and I watched her try to times unconfessed times in real time. I exaggerated. We didn't... Actually, stop. I was upset. I said things that weren't... Nicole, stop. She stopped. I asked her to be out within 72 hours. She called her mother that night. I slept on the couch and listened to her cry through the bedroom door and felt absolutely nothing. That scared me more than the anger. The packing took 3 days. I helped because, even at the end of everything, I apparently couldn't stop being the guy who carries boxes. On the second day, while we were wrapping plates in newspaper like some grotesque parody of moving in together, I asked the question I knew I'd regret. She didn't look up from the plate in her hands. "I need to hear you say it, Nicole." She set the plate down. Looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before. Not guilt, not sadness. Something harder. Something that had been living behind her face for months, maybe years, waiting for permission to surface. "I wanted to cheat on you." 4 words. No tears, no qualifier. Not times it just happened times, or times I was confused, times or times I didn't mean for it to go that far. Asterisks. She wanted to. She chose it. My knees didn't buckle. My vision didn't blur. I just stood there holding a sheet of newspaper and thought times, I don't know this person. I have never known this person. Asterisk. Then she twisted the knife so deep I'm not sure it's fully come out even now. And it wasn't just Derek. I feffed other guys too. The kitchen went silent. Not quiet times, silent times the way a room sounds after a gunshot. She left the next morning. Drove 14 hours back to her home state. 2 days later, she texted claiming that last part was a lie. Said she'd only said it because she was angry and wanted to hurt me. I stared at that text for a long time. Because here's what she didn't understand. It didn't matter which version was true. Either she cheated with multiple people across our 7-year relationship, or she was the kind of person who would fabricate that specific confession. The most surgically devastating thing she could say just to watch it. Land. Both possibilities revealed a stranger. Both meant the woman I loved was a fiction I'd co-authored. I blocked her number, then her email, then her Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, her mother, her sister, her best friend from college. I went through every platform with the precision of someone defusing a bomb: Venmo, LinkedIn, SoundCloud, every last digital thread that connected my life to hers. Scorched earth. Total erasure. Then I tried to fill the crater. Therapy helped, then didn't. Drinking helped then, really didn't. Tinder was the worst, lying in a stranger's bed at 2 a.m., feeling more alone than I ever felt during 4 years of long distance. I kept reaching for something that would make the emptiness transactional, something I could swallow or swipe or pour that would settle the account. Nothing balanced. 1 year of no contact. Exactly 1 year to the date. She knows she's a disgrace for a human being. At least I hope she has that much self-awareness enough to accept responsibility and ask for forgiveness, even if not to me, then to herself. I doubt she sees today as a milestone. Dates have always had sentimental importance to me, not her. Then again, I don't know. I guess it shouldn't matter to me what she's thinking, but some days I still can't help it. Going this far without speaking to somebody you legitimately built your life around, it rewires something fundamental. Here's what I've landed on, and it's not clean or triumphant. I still love her. I still miss her. And I also know I disappeared inside that relationship. I made her the entire architecture of my 20s. And when she detonated it, I had no foundation left to stand on. That's not her fault. That's mine. The 7-year investment is gone. No refund. No exchange. The only return I'll ever see is who I become next. I'm working on making that person worth it. My boyfriend called me evil for being a landlord while living in my house completely rent-free. Let that satisfying little irony sink in for a second. So I inherited a duplex. I let my boyfriend move in without charging him a single cent. And the moment he found out I collect rent from the tenant downstairs, he demanded I hand over half that income to him, or else I'm, quote, just as bad as every landlord who ever screwed him over. It got so much worse from there. I'm 22 female. My boyfriend is Derek, he's 25. My dad is Lars, and he becomes important later, trust me. Then there's Marin, my downstairs tenant, a lovely woman in her 30s, who accidentally blew up my entire relationship by knocking on my door about a broken freezer. Let me back up and give you the full picture, because I think context matters here, and I want to be as clear as possible. I should note, I'm not in the US. I don't even live in a country where English is the first language, so bear with me if some of this reads a little stiff. I'm trying. I inherited the duplex from my grandmother when I was 20. She left it to me specifically, not my parents, not my cousins, me. It's nothing glamorous. We're talking about a place roughly an hour's drive from the nearest city, 15 minutes to the closest store. The town has maybe 3,000 people, a preschool, one playground, and a school for kids ages 6 through 16. That's the infrastructure. So when people ask why I only charge Marin $500 a month for a 5-room unit, that's why. It's not the city. It's not even close to the city. $500 is fair here. Marin thought it was more than fair. She'd told me twice that she felt lucky to have found the place. I moved into the upstairs unit after my grandmother passed. Did some repairs myself, painted, replaced the bathroom tiles with Lars standing behind me reading instructions off his phone because neither of us had done tile work before. It became mine in a way that felt earned, not just inherited. Derek came into my life about 8 months before everything fell apart. We met through mutual friends, dated for 4 months, and when his lease ended and his roommate situation imploded, I offered him my spare room. That evolved into him sleeping in my bed within 2 weeks. He never asked what the rent situation was. I never brought it up. He moved in with a duffel bag and a gaming PC, and I thought, this is easy. This is good. He knew I owned the building. He knew someone lived downstairs. What he apparently never connected was that someone lives downstairs meant someone pays me rent to live downstairs. In hindsight, maybe that's on me for not being explicit. Maybe not so clear. I apologize for that. But also, what did he think was happening that Marin was squatting that my dead grandmother's duplex operated on the honor system? He never offered to pay rent. Not once. Not even a token gesture, not even a, hey, should I Venmo you for utilities? He'd split groceries with me roughly 50-50. And he seemed to consider that his full contribution to our shared existence. I didn't push it. I loved him. I thought we were building towards something. I told myself that keeping score wasn't what good partners did. Then the freezer broke. It was a Thursday evening. Derek and I were on the couch, his feet on my lap, some documentary playing that neither of us was watching. 3 knocks on the door. I opened it, and there was Marin apologetic, arms crossed, like she was cold, even though it was June. I'm so sorry to bother you. The freezer downstairs just died. Everything's thawing. I told her not to worry about it. I said I'd reimburse her for a replacement, and that she should pick whatever model worked for the space and send me the receipt. Standard landlord stuff. Marin thanked me, apologized again, and left. I closed the door. Derek had muted the TV. Why would you pay for her freezer? His voice was flat. Not angry yet. Just genuinely confused, like I'd offered to buy a stranger's car. Because I'm her landlord. It's my responsibility to maintain the appliances. The silence that followed had weight. I watched his expression change in stages, confusion, then something clicking behind his eyes, then his jaw tightening. You charge her rent. How much? $500 a month. He stood up. My legs went cold where his feet had been. You're a Times landlord, asterisk. You collect rent from people. You profit off someone needing a roof over their head. Derek, it's $500 a month for a 5-room. That's not the point. His hand cut through the air. Landlords are parasites, every single one. They hoard housing and leech off working people, and he laughed, but it came out cracked. I've been sleeping next to a landlord this whole time. My stomach dropped. Not because I agreed with him, but because of the look on his face. Pure disgust. Directed at me. Over a broken freezer. I tried to talk. He wouldn't let me finish a sentence. Every time I opened my mouth, he'd talk over me with another variation of the same accusation. Asterisk, evil. Exploitative. No different from the guy who raised his rent 3 times in 2 years. Asterisk. Then he said it. If you had any integrity, you'd give me half that income. $500 a month, I get $250. That's the bare minimum of making this right. I blinked. Making times what time's right. The fact that you've been hiding this from me, the fact that I'm living with someone who exploits people for profit, you owe me that. He went to bed. I stayed on the couch until 2 a.m, replaying every word, my chest tight, my hands shaking, and for 3 full days after that, Derek didn't speak to me at all. It was during those silent days, lying awake at 4 a.m, while he slept soundly beside me, that I started counting. Every month, he'd lived with me rent-free. Every utility bill I'd covered alone. Every time I'd bought groceries, he forgot to reimburse. And I started reading what strangers on the internet had to say about it. That's when I called Lars. I texted Lars on a Tuesday. 3 words times, can you come asterisk? He didn't ask why. He didn't call back with questions. He just replied times, what time? Asterisk. I told him 7. He said he'd be in the driveway by 6:30. That's Lars. That's always been Lars. He once drove 40 minutes to my university because I mentioned on the phone that my tire looked low. Didn't tell me he was coming. I walked out of a lecture, and there he was, crouched by my car with a pressure gauge reading glasses on. The 3 silent days had done something to me. Not what Derek probably intended. I think he expected the silence to function like a siege, starve me out, make me desperate enough to concede. And for the first day, maybe the first day and a half, it worked. I made his coffee. I left a note on the counter that said Times. I'm sorry, can we talk? Times I caught myself mentally rehearsing apologies for owning property my dead grandmother left me. But somewhere around hour 50 of being frozen out by a man who had never paid a single bill in my home, something shifted. I stopped feeling guilty. I started feeling stupid. Different sensation entirely. Guilt sits in your chest. Stupidity burns in your face. I reread the comments people had left on my post. Some were harsh, some were kind. Almost all of them asked the same question I'd been avoiding times. Why does he think he deserves half the income from a building he has no connection to, no investment in, and no legal claim over asterisks? I didn't have an answer. And that was the answer. Lars pulled into the driveway at 6:28. I know, because I was watching from the kitchen window. He turned the engine off, reclined his seat slightly, and started reading something on his phone. He didn't come inside. I hadn't asked him to. I just needed to know he was there. Derek came home from work at 6:50. He walked past Lars's car without acknowledging it. Came inside, dropped his bag by the door, opened the fridge, and stood there staring into it like it owed him something. Can we sit down? I said. He closed the fridge. Looked at me. His expression was the one he'd been wearing for 3 days flat, punishing a little performative. He sat on the couch. I sat beside him. One cushion between us. I've been thinking about what you said, I started. About landlords profiting being wrong. He crossed his arms. Waited. If that's genuinely what you believe, and I'm not saying you're wrong to feel that way, would you feel better if I donated half the rental income to a housing charity? There's one in the city that helps people find affordable. A times charity asterisk. Yes. If the issue is that I'm profiting off housing, then the money could go to... You want to give times my times money to a charity. The words landed and just stayed there, suspended between us. Asterisk. My money. Asterisk. He'd said it without flinching. Without even hearing himself. It was never your money, Derek. His jaw tightened. The arms uncrossed. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and for a moment I thought he might actually engage, might realize what he'd just revealed. Instead, he laughed. Short, bitter through his nose. You're crazy. You know that. You're actually insane. I'm asking you a genuine question. If landlords profiting is the problem, why does the solution involve you profiting instead? Because I've been times here, asterisk. I've been part of this. You've lived here for free. For 8 months. You've never paid rent. You've never paid a utility bill. You split groceries, maybe 70% of the time. Oh, so now you're keeping score. I wasn't. I started. He stood up. The cushion between us decompressed slowly, which is a strange thing to notice during the moment your relationship ends, but I noticed it. I regret ever meeting you, he said. And he said it quietly, which made it worse. Yelling, I could have dismissed. This was deliberate. Surgical. Meant to lodge somewhere permanent. I'm going to tell everyone what kind of person you are. Every single person we know. Derek. Don't. He grabbed his keys from the hook by the door, then stopped, looked at them, looked at me, and threw them. Not at me exactly. At my feet. They hit the floor and skidded into the baseboard. Then he turned and punched the wall beside the doorframe. Not hard enough to break through, but hard enough that the sound made my whole body flinch. The front door opened. Lars filled the frame. He didn't say a word. Just stood there, hands at his sides, reading glasses still pushed up on his forehead. Derek looked at him. Looked at me. Laughed again, that same cracked, bitter sound. Daddy to the rescue. Perfect. This is perfect. He grabbed his jacket off the hook. Pushed past Lars, who stepped aside just enough to let him through without contact. The door to his car slammed. The engine started. Gravel popped under tires. Lars looked at me. You okay? I nodded. Then I shook my head. Then I sat back down on the couch and pressed my palms flat against my thighs to stop them from trembling. He sat in the chair across from me and didn't say anything else for a long time. That's Lars. He knows when silence is a weapon and when it's a gift. This was the second kind. I changed the locks the next morning. Called a locksmith before I'd even made coffee. It cost me more than I expected, but I would have paid triple. Derek texted once 2 days later. Times I need my stuff. Asterisk. I told him he could come Saturday between noon and 2 and that Lars would be present. He agreed without argument. He showed up with a friend I didn't recognize, filled 3 garbage bags, and left in under 20 minutes. He didn't look at me. His friend nodded politely on the way out, which was almost worse, the second-hand embarrassment of a stranger witnessing the wreckage. Maybe not so clear. I apologized for that, and I tried my best writing out everything as clearly and with as much detail as I could. Sorry if it feels a bit anticlimactic due to the style of how I wrote it. I tried. Here's what I know now. I gave someone free housing for 8 months. Covered his utilities. Shared my bed, my kitchen, my grandmother's home. And the moment he discovered I received $500 a month from the woman downstairs, he didn't feel betrayed. He felt times entitled asterisk. Those are different things. Betrayal looks inward. Entitlement looks at your wallet. I don't think Derek hated landlords. I think Derek hated that I had something he didn't, and ideology gave him a vocabulary for that resentment. Marin still lives downstairs. She texted me the day after everything happened. She'd heard the wall punch, the shouting, the car peeling out. She asked if I was safe. I told her yes. She sent a heart emoji and didn't pry further. The new freezer works great, by the way. My mother made me promise that she'd always be the first phone call whenever something good happened in my life. Not because she wanted to celebrate with me, because she wanted a head start on figuring out how to ruin it. 2 stories tonight. In the first, a bride watches her own mother announce a surprise wedding 1 week before hers skip the rehearsal fake. An early flight home and secretly honeymoon in New York City while her daughter's wedding cake was still being cut. In the second, a woman's boyfriend dropped serious money on a birthday gift that would literally make her physically ill, then tells her she could just push through it. I'm 26 female, recently married to my husband Marcus, and currently pregnant with our first child. My mother is Diane, and Diane doesn't do supporting roles. Then we've got Derek, a boyfriend who thinks listening and nodding are the same thing, and his sister Megan, who accidentally blew the whole thing wide open. The first time I called Diane with good news, I was sitting in Marcus's car in the parking lot of a Thai restaurant still shaking. He'd proposed 20 minutes earlier, right there at our table, and I'd said yes before he finished the sentence. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely unlock my phone. I called her first. Before my best friend. Before Marcus's parents. Before anyone. Because that was the rule. She picked up on the fourth ring. Marcus proposed, I said. Mom, I'm engaged. 3 seconds of silence. Then a sigh. Well, she said. I'm sure I'm the last to know. I looked at Marcus. He was watching my face, and I watched his expression shift from hopeful to something harder. I put her on speaker so he could hear. You're literally the first person I call. Another sigh. I just would have liked to have been involved, that's all. But I guess that's not how you do things. Marcus reached over and squeezed my knee. I stared at the engagement ring, still warm from his hands, and felt something small and bright inside me flicker and dim. That was the template. That was always the template. I just didn't recognize it yet. The engagement party was 3 weeks later. My best friend organized it, she'd be my maid of honor, and she threw herself into planning with the kind of energy that made me feel, for the first time, like someone was genuinely excited for me. Diane showed up 40 minutes late in a white dress. During the toast, she started crying. Not quiet tears. Full body, shoulder-shaking sobs that made the entire room pivot toward her. Marcus's mother actually got up from her seat to bring Diane a glass of water. I stood there holding a champagne flute, smiling, watching my own engagement toast become a group effort to comfort my mother. She's just emotional, my dad Greg said afterward, not meeting my eyes. She wore white dad. He shrugged. You know how she is. I did. That was the problem. A month later, Marcus and I attended a friend's wedding. Diane was there too, with Carlos, her boyfriend of maybe 4 months at that point. Carlos didn't speak English. They communicated through Google Translate, holding his phone between them like a walkie-talkie, and Diane spoke about this like it was the most romantic thing that had ever happened to a human being. During the reception, I watched from across the room as Diane dragged Carlos onto the dance floor and ground against him to a Bruno Mars song, while the bride's elderly grandmother sat 3 feet away, frozen mid-bite. Marcus put his hand on the small of my back. Your mom is? I know. She's really... I times no asterisk. The bridal shower was next. My maid of honor spent weeks on it. Hand-addressed invitations, a mimosa bar, little games with photos of Marcus and me from college. It was beautiful. Diane sat in the corner on her phone for 2.5 hours. She didn't participate in a single game. When I opened gifts, she watched with this flat, distant expression like she was sitting in a waiting room. She gave me a set of dish towels, not wrapped. Still in the plastic bag from Home Goods receipt tucked inside. I thanked her. She said, My maid of honor found me in the bathroom afterward, mascara running. She didn't say anything. She just locked the door and sat on the edge of the tub while I cried. When I found out I was pregnant, I called Diane first. Again. Because the rule was the rule, and I was still at 26, a daughter reaching out her hand to a woman who kept biting it. Mom, I'm pregnant. Dead air. Then in the flattest monotone I have ever heard from a living human, oh, okay. Marcus and I are really excited. That's nice. She didn't ask how far along I was. She didn't ask about due dates or names or how I was feeling. She asked if I'd talked to Greg yet, and when I said no, she said, well, he'll probably be more excited than me since I'm always the last to hear anything. Marcus was standing in the kitchen doorway. I could see his jaw working. I hung up and set my phone face down on the counter. She's done, he said quietly. She's my mom. She's times done, times babe. Then came the wedding budget conversation. I gave Diane a full year's notice. 12 months to save to plan to book a flight. She told me she couldn't afford to attend. Couldn't swing it. Too expensive. I offered to help with the flight. She declined. I offered to let her stay with us. She declined. Every solution I presented, she swatted away like a fly. Then exactly 1 week before my wedding, my phone buzzed. It was a photo. Diane and Carlos standing in front of a courthouse holding a marriage certificate. She was beaming the kind of unguarded, radiant smile I had never once seen directed at anything I had accomplished. The caption read, "Time surprise, we're married, asterisk." She'd known Carlos for 5 months. They still use Google Translate. Part of her reasoning for getting married before me was so that they could make this trip about times them, asterisk. I didn't understand that yet. Not fully. Not until the wedding weekend, when everything Diane had been building toward finally detonated. And detonate it did. The rehearsal dinner was Friday night. Diane didn't show. No call. No text. No explanation. My maid of honor kept checking her phone for me so I wouldn't have to, and every time she looked up and gave a small shake of her head, I just nodded and kept eating. Marcus's parents filled the silence beautifully. His mother told embarrassing stories about him. As a toddler, his father made a toast that made everyone cry. It was warm. It was generous. It was everything. Diane rolled in Saturday morning 4 hours before the ceremony, Carlos in tow. She found me in the bridal suite while my maid of honor was pinning my veil. "There's my baby," she said, and before I could respond, both her hands were on my stomach. Palms flat, fingers spread, pressing into my belly like she was claiming territory. I was 5 months pregnant. I hadn't invited the touch. My body went rigid and my maid of honor's hands froze mid-pin. "Oh, stop. I'm your times, mother, asterisk." She squeezed once, then stepped back and looked me over. Not at my dress. Not at my veil. At my body with an expression I can only describe as inventory. "You're showing more than I thought you would." My maid of honor set down the pins. "Diane, we need to finish getting her ready." "Fine, fine." She waved a hand. "Carlos is looking for the seating chart. He needs to sit next to me. He won't know anyone." She left. My maid of honor locked the door behind her and we looked at each other in the mirror. Neither of us said anything. She just picked up the pins and kept going. The ceremony was beautiful. I need to say that. Marcus cried when he saw me. I cried when I saw him cry. The officiant mispronounced Marcus as Marcos twice, and we laughed both times, and for 22 minutes, standing under an arch my maid of honor had wrapped in eucalyptus at 6 a.m, I forgot about Diane entirely. Then came photos. The photographer lined up family shots, and Diane refused to smile in any frame that didn't include Carlos. Arms crossed, mouth flat, dead-eyed until he stepped in beside her, at which point she lit up like a marquee. In my wedding photos, at my wedding. The photographer looked at me with a question on her face, and I just said, "Move on." During the reception, my father Greg walked me onto the dance floor for the father-daughter dance. We made it maybe 90 seconds in before I noticed him glancing over my shoulder. I turned. Lily, my 14-year-old sister, was sitting at the head table with her arms folded, crying. Not sad crying. Furious crying. The kind of crying that is a weapon. "She doesn't like the food," Greg murmured. "She's times 14, asterisk." "I know, sweetheart, but..." "Dad. It's our dance." He looked at me. He looked at Lily. And I watched him make the calculation, in real time, the same calculation he had been making my entire life. "I'll be right back," he said. He left the dance floor during our father-daughter dance. He left the reception, got in his car, and drove to Subway to buy Lily a sandwich. My maid of honor grabbed Marcus, and Marcus stepped in to finish the dance with me, his hand firm on my back, his mouth close to my ear. "I've got you," he said. I pressed my face into his shoulder so no one could see it crumble. By 9 o'clock, Diane's entire side had cleared out. She claimed early flights. Everyone had early flights. Couldn't stay. So sorry. Hugs and congratulations, and gone. 3 days later, my bridesmaid texted me a screenshot from Instagram. Diane beaming in front of the Statue of Liberty, Carlos's arm around her waist. Caption times, honeymoon vibes, NYC baby asterisk. There were no early flights. There was never a budget problem. She'd married Carlos a week before my wedding, so this trip could double as times their times honeymoon, and she'd ship my younger brother home on an earlier flight alone to make the timeline work. She'd used my wedding as a layover. I stared at that screenshot for a long time. Then I set my phone down and felt something I didn't expect. Relief. I went no contact. Diane's texts came in waves, breezy at first, then confused, then wounded, then furious. I let them pile up unread for 2 weeks before I finally responded with a message listing everything. Every white dress, every dead monotone, every stolen dance, every lie about flights. She responded to 3 items. The 3 she could defend. The rest she ignored entirely, then pivoted times. I guess I'm just a terrible mother. I guess nothing I do is ever enough for you, asterisk. I typed back, times I need space. Please respect that. Asterisk. She did not respect that. But I kept the door closed anyway. Here's what I know now. Diane never wanted to be the first person called with good news. She wanted to be the Times, only Times news. Every milestone I reached was a mirror she couldn't stand looking into, so she smashed it and built her own reflection in the shards. The courthouse wedding, the honeymoon hijack, the grinding on Carlos at someone else's reception, none of it was about love or joy. It was about gravity. Hers. I'm married to my best friend. I'm growing a human. And for the first time in 26 years, my happiness belongs to me. No one is standing at the edges trying to eat it alive. As for Diane, she has shown her jealousy. She did not care about being there for me, but about being closer to New York City. And the next thing would have been making my pregnancy about her becoming a grandparent. I'm done reaching out my hand. The bite marks have finally scarred over.
The last thing I did before leaving for my work trip was check the new gate lock. It was a beast, a heavy-duty deadbolt that clicked shut with the satisfying finality of a bank vault. The fence was 8 feet of solid black aluminum, perfectly code-compliant, and I thought perfectly teenager-proof. The pool shimmered a pristine turquoise jewel I'd sunk half my savings into. My own private oasis. 2 weeks in Chicago for a conference, and then I'd be back to enjoy it. I should have known it was too good to be true. The moment my car pulled into the driveway, 2 weeks later I felt it. A knot in my stomach. The side gate, the one with the brand new lock, was slightly ajar. Not wide open, just enough to scream that something was wrong. I dropped my suitcase on the gravel and walked over. The deadbolt wasn't picked. It was destroyed. The metal around it was warped and splintered like someone had taken a crowbar to it. My backyard looked like a hurricane had hit a frat house. Red Solo cups and beer cans littered the grass, some floating like little plastic buoys in my once pristine pool. A lawn chair was overturned, one of its legs snapped clean off. Cigarette butts were ground into the new patio stones. Someone had even thrown a half-eaten hot dog into one of the skimmers. The whole place reeked of stale beer and chlorine. Rage, cold and sharp, went through me. I didn't even clean up. I walked straight inside, went to my office, and pulled up the security feed on my desktop. The system had 4 HD cameras, all motion activated. The files were all there, timestamped. I clicked play on the first one from 5 nights ago. It was like watching a nature documentary, except the animals were a pack of local high schoolers. The first two lanky kids in hoodies spent 10 minutes prying at the gate before it finally gave way. Then the floodgates opened. Over 20 of them poured into my yard like it was a public water park. I watched for an hour, fast-forwarding through the grainy nighttime footage. I saw every face. I saw the kid who broke my lawn chair by trying to do a backflip off it. I saw the girl who laughed as she flicked her cigarette into the pool. I saw them all clear as day, their smug, entitled faces illuminated by the pool lights I'd paid a fortune to install. I saved the clips to a thumb drive. I had them. The next morning, I walked into the police station. The town is small, the kind of place where the police mostly deal with parking tickets and lost dogs. The officer at the desk, a guy named Miller with a gut that strained the buttons of his uniform, looked bored before I even opened my mouth. "Can I help you?" he sighed. "I need to file a report," I said, placing the thumb drive on the counter. "Breaking and entering, vandalism, trespassing." Miller picked up the drive and dangled it between his fingers. "Okay. What happened?" I laid it all out. The 2-week trip, the broken lock, the trashed yard, the pool. "It's all on there," I said, pointing to the drive. "HD video. You can see every one of their faces." He didn't seem impressed. He leaned back in his chair, which groaned in protest. "Look, kids do stupid things. They probably saw the new pool and got carried away. You sure you want to make a big deal out of this?" I stared at him. "A big deal? They did thousands of dollars in damage and broke into my property. Yes, I want to make a big deal out of it. That's your job." His eyes narrowed. "My job is to keep the peace. Dragging 20 kids and their families through the mud over a pool party isn't exactly keeping the peace." "Just watch the video," I said, my voice tight. "Then do your job." He sighed again, a long theatrical exhale. "Fine. Leave it here. We'll take a look when we get a chance." A week went by. Nothing. I called and was told Officer Miller was looking into it. Another week. I called again. Miller was out on patrol. I left a message. He didn't call back. The message was clear: they were going to bury this. My trashed yard was cleaned up, the pool filter was fixed, but the anger was still simmering. I was being stonewalled. In my own town. I walked back into the station 2 weeks to the day after I dropped off the evidence. Miller was at the same desk, sipping a coffee. He looked up, and the briefest flicker of annoyance crossed his face before he smoothed it over. "Austin, right? We're still investigating," he said before I could speak. "No, you're not," I said, keeping my voice level. "You haven't done a thing. You haven't called me. You haven't identified a single person from that crystal clear video I gave you. These things take time. I'm done waiting." I leaned forward, planting my hands on his desk. "Here's the deal, Officer Miller. Either you start making arrests by the end of this week, or my lawyer is going to file a lawsuit against this department for dereliction of duty. And trust me, he'll be very interested in seeing that video too." The color drained from his face. The word lawsuit hangs different in a small town. It's a threat that echoes. He held up his hands. Okay. Calm down. There's no need for that. Let me make some calls." I walked out of there, feeling a grim sense of satisfaction. It was a bluff. I didn't have a lawyer, but it had worked. And then, for another week, silence. I was about to make good on my threat, find a lawyer in the city, when my phone finally rang. It was an unknown number. "This is Officer Miller." His voice was flat, all the folksy charm gone. Finally, I said, "So you have some names for me?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear him breathing. "We've identified a few of them, Austin," he said, slowly, his voice dropping to a low conspiratorial tone. "But, look, before we proceed, you need to understand something." "Understand what?" Another pause. "The thing is," he said, his voice heavy, with warning, "there are some names on this list. Important names. You might want to seriously reconsider how far you want to take this." "Important names?" I laughed, a short, sharp bark of disbelief. "What the hell is that supposed to mean, Miller? Is this town so broken that some last names are get-out-of-jail-free cards?" "I'm just telling you how it is," he said, his voice a low rumble. "These aren't just any kids. Their parents are involved in the community. You push this, it's going to get messy. For you." The threat hung in the air, thick and greasy. It wasn't about justice anymore. It was about who knew who. "I don't care if the governor's son was doing cannonballs into my pool, Miller. They broke the law. File the charges. That's an order from a citizen and a taxpayer. Do your job." I hung up before he could answer. The first volley didn't come from the police. It came from my own girlfriend, Sarah. She showed up that evening with a bottle of wine and a worried look on her face. "I ran into Carol Ann downtown," she said, avoiding my eyes as she uncorked the wine. Carol Ann was the town's biggest gossip. "She said you're trying to press charges against half the high school." "I'm pressing charges against the 21 individuals who broke into my house and caused $5,000 in damages," I corrected. She finally looked at me, her expression pain. "Austin, they're kids. They did a stupid thing. Are you really going to brand them all as criminals? Ruin their chances at college, their futures over a dumb party? They broke my gate with a crowbar. Sarah. They trashed my property. The dumb party was a crime. What am I supposed to do? Send them a thank you note? You're supposed to be the adult," she said, her voice rising. "You could just talk to the parents, make them pay for the damages. Why do you have to be such a bully about it? It's just a pool." The word bully landed like a punch to the gut. "A bully? I'm the victim here. Are you?" she shot back. "Or are you a guy with a new pool who can't stand that some kids had fun in it without your permission?" I stared at her, speechless. It was like I was speaking a different language. We didn't resolve it. She left the full wine bottle on the counter and walked out. The next call was from my mother. Her voice was pure weaponized guilt. "Austin, honey, I heard what's happening. Mrs. Gable from the church group called me. Her grandson was there. She's worried sick. You know these families, we have to live here. Please, for my sake, just let this go." Even my best friend Mark cornered me at our usual spot for a beer. "Dude, I get it. You're pissed. But you're going up against the whole town on this. Just, is this the hill you really want to die on?" It felt like the walls were closing in. Every conversation was the same. I wasn't the victim. I was the villain. The unreasonable asshole making a mountain out of a molehill. I felt totally, utterly alone. It was me against everyone. That night, unable to sleep, I did what any desperate person does. I went online. I found a generic legal advice forum, created a temporary account, and laid out the whole story, stripping out names and locations. The break in the video, the damage, the police stonewalling, the pressure from family and friends. I hit post and watched the screen expecting to be called an asshole there too. The comments trickled in. Most were supportive. NTA. Your property, your rules. Call a lawyer and the local news. But then one comment stopped me cold. Asterisk user. Small Town Blues wrote, I guarantee the cops aren't lazy. They're scared. There's a big fish in that group of kids. Mayor's kid, police chief's nephew, something like that. They're not protecting the kids, they're protecting their own jobs. Find out who they are. That's your leverage. Asterisk. The words clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Miller's warning about important names. The coordinated town-wide pressure. It wasn't a random social phenomenon. It was a defense mechanism. The next day, I got a text from a guy I knew from high school, Kevin. He worked for a pool maintenance company, the one I'd hired to fix the filter. Asterisk, hey man, can we talk off the record? Asterisk, we met at a coffee shop in the next town over. He looked nervous, constantly glancing over his shoulder. Look, Austin, I shouldn't be doing this, he started, his voice low. But my boss showed me your security footage to identify what kind of crap was in the skimmer. I saw the kids. I leaned forward. And he took a deep breath. You know Mayor Jenkins' daughter, Ashley. She's the one who was flicking cigarettes into the pool. And the kid who did the backflip off your chair and broke it. That's Jason Thompson. Judge Thompson's kid. It's a who's who of this town's country club roster. There it was. The ugly, simple truth. I wasn't fighting a bunch of delinquent teens. I was fighting the town's power structure. Pressing charges wasn't just ruining the kids' futures. It was threatening their parents. And in a town this small, people like that don't forgive. They don't forget. They get even. My business permits, my property taxes, simple traffic stops, my life could become a bureaucratic nightmare. I'd be a permanent outsider in my own home. I went home, my anger replaced by something colder. A clear, hard sense of strategy. I couldn't win a public war, but I could still win the battle. I pulled out my phone and dialed Officer Miller. Austin. He answered, his voice wary. Have you had some time to think? I have, I said, my tone even and calm. It clearly unnerved him. I've decided to drop the request for criminal charges. I could hear the relief in his exhale. Good. That's a smart move. I'll let the families know. I'm not finished. I cut in, my voice turning to ice. I'm dropping the criminal charges on one condition. You are going to arrange a meeting with me and every single parent of every kid in that video. It will be held at my house tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Whoa, now I can't force them to. You won't have to force them, Miller. You're going to give them a choice. They can either show up at my house with a checkbook, or they can watch their little darlings on the 11 o'clock news. I sent a copy of the video to a reporter in the city this afternoon. His name is Dan Matthews. He's very interested in a story about small-town corruption and how the children of the elite are above the law. Whether he runs that story depends entirely on how my meeting goes tomorrow night. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. I had him. I had all of them. The next evening, my driveway was filled with Mercedes BMWs and oversized SUVs. One by one, they filed into my living room: the mayor, the judge, the doctors, the business owners. They stood in awkward silence, refusing to look at me, their faces a mask of resentment and humiliation. I stood before them, a single sheet of paper in my hand. "Good evening," I said, my voice echoing in the quiet room. "There's no need for introductions. I have an itemized list of the damages. The new deadbolt, the patio chair, the full drain and cleaning of the pool, the repair of the filtration system, miscellaneous cleanup, and a $500 inconvenience fee for my time. The total is $6,475. I placed the invoice on the coffee table. That comes out to $309 per family. I don't care how you split it up. I just want to check for the full amount on this table before you leave. Once I have it, the matter is closed." The video disappears forever. Any questions? No one spoke. The silence was thick with what they couldn't say. After a long moment, Judge Thompson stepped forward, pulled out a checkbook, and wrote. One by one, the others followed suit, a procession of simmering, impotent rage. They didn't get justice. But I did. My hair is a part of me. That's not some cliche I trot out for effect. It's the simple physical truth. It falls to the middle of my thighs, a heavy curtain of gold that has taken 23 years to grow. It's the first thing people notice and the last thing I think about before I go to sleep, as I carefully braid it to keep it from tangling. I spend a small fortune on special oils and conditioners. It is my pride. This has on occasion been a problem for other people. In high school, my best friend Megan staged what she called an intervention. She sat me down, her face a mask of grave concern, and told me my hair was holding me back. "It's just a lot, Aubrey," she'd said, gesturing vaguely at me. "It's kind of childish. Boys think it's weird. You'd look so much more mature with a cute bob." I was crushed. I spent a week staring at my reflection, trying to see the freak she saw. I almost booked the appointment. Then I overheard her in the locker room complaining to another girl. "I don't get it," she'd sniffled. "I work so hard and all anyone ever talks about is Aubrey and her stupid perfect hair." It wasn't concern. It was jealousy. I never forgot that. The sting of someone trying to diminish me disguised as friendly advice. So you can imagine I have a bit of a complex. When my sister Sarah got engaged, I was ecstatic. She's 2 years older, my opposite in every way, dark, petite, and pragmatic, where I'm fair, tall, and a bit of a dreamer. We've always been close. She asked me to be her maid of honor, and I dove into the role headfirst. I've spent the last 10 months helping her address envelopes, touring venues, and sitting through cake tastings until I was sick of buttercream. Her happiness was my happiness. The wedding was just a month away when it happened. I was at her apartment, which had become a command center of tulle ribbon and seating charts. Mom was there too, and we were assembling wedding favors, a mountain of tiny burlap bags and lavender sprigs. The mood was light, full of laughter and anticipation. "Aubrey, can you come here for a sec?" Sarah called from her bedroom. "I want your opinion on the veil again." "On my way," I said, brushing dusty lavender from my jeans. I walked into her room, and she immediately shut the door behind me, the click of the latch unnaturally loud in the small space. The cheerful noise from the living room was instantly muffled. My sister wasn't holding her veil. She was standing by her dresser with her arms crossed, her jaw tight. A cold knot formed in my stomach. "Everything okay? We need to talk," she said, her voice low. "About what? Did the caterer back out?" She shook her head, not quite meeting my eyes. No. It's about your hair. I froze. The ghost of Megan's voice whispered in my ear. My hair. What about it? It's too much, Aubrey, she said, finally looking at me. Her expression wasn't concerned. It was annoyed. The bridesmaid dresses are so elegant and simple, and your hair is distracting. It's all anyone will look at. I felt the blood drain from my face. Distracting. Yes. It's going to look weird in the photos. It's all the way down to your legs. It will throw off the whole balance of the bridal party. Honestly, it just looks bad. Asterisk looks bad. Asterisk, the words hit me like a slap. My meticulously cared for healthy shining hair looks bad. I took a breath, forcing down the hurt, reminding myself this was about her. This was her wedding, her stress. She was probably just freaking out over some small detail, and my hair was an easy target. I had to be the calm one. I had to be reasonable. Sarah, I would never do anything to take attention away from you, I said, keeping my voice even. I was already planning on getting it professionally styled. I'm thinking a really intricate, elegant updo, like a classic chignon or a braided crown. It'll be completely off my shoulders and contained. No one will even know how long it is. It will look beautiful and classic, I promise. I smiled, relieved. It was a perfect compromise. She got the neat uniform look she wanted for her photos, and I didn't have to entertain the insane idea of cutting the one thing I loved about my appearance for a 4-hour event. It was a win-win. Sarah's face didn't soften. The hard line of her mouth tightened. She scoffed, a short, sharp sound of disbelief. An updo, she repeated, her voice dripping with disdain. Are you serious, Aubrey? With the amount of hair you have, an updo will look like a giant, unnatural beehive on your head. It'll be even more times distracting. It's not about it being contained. It's about the sheer volume of it. It's just too much. I stared at her, the logic short-circuiting in my brain. Too long when it was down, too big when it was up. This wasn't about aesthetics. This was something else. Then, what, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What do you want me to do, Sarah? She stepped closer, her eyes finally locking onto mine. The annoyance was gone, replaced by a chillingly calm resolve. I want you to cut it, she said. I've already found a stylist. He does amazing work. A chic shoulder-length cut. It will look so much better. You'll be doing it for me. For my wedding. The words hung in the air, so absurd, so utterly insane that for a second I thought I must have misheard. I almost laughed. Cut it. You're joking, right? Do I look like I'm joking? Sarah's face was stone. It's my wedding, Aubrey. It's one day. Your hair will grow back. My hair will grow back to this length in about 10 years, Sarah. No. The answer is no. It's a ridiculous ask. So you care more about your stupid hair than you do about me. The emotional blackmail was so textbook it was almost lazy. I tried one last time to find a middle ground, a sliver of sanity. That's not fair. I will do anything else. I'll step down as maid of honor. I'll just be a guest. That way I won't be in the main photos. No one has to look at me. She threw her hands up in exasperation. Oh, right, because my own sister hiding in the back of the church won't be a distraction at all. Everyone will be asking why you're not up there with me. You'll be in the candid shots, you'll be at the reception. You can't just not exist times at my wedding, Aubrey. And as long as you exist with asterisk that asterisk attached to your head, you're a problem. A problem attached to my head. That's when the last thread of my composure snapped. The hurt curdled into something cold and hard. Fine, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Then I won't come to the wedding. Because I am not cutting my hair. Sarah's eyes widened in shocked triumph, like this was the outcome she'd secretly been hoping for. She didn't argue. She just turned, yanked the bedroom door open, and ran into the living room, already sobbing. "Mom," she wailed. "Aubrey's trying to ruin my wedding." I walked out after her, right into the ambush. My mom was on her feet, her arms wrapped around a heaving Sarah. She looked at me, her face a mask of disappointment. "Aubrey, what did you do?" "She told me to cut my hair," I said flatly. "All of it." "To my shoulders." My mother's eyes flickered over my hair. And for the first time in my life, her expression wasn't one of pride. It was calculating. Critical. "Well, it is her day," she said, as if that explained everything. "It's a big ask. But she's the bride. A little sacrifice for your sister isn't the end of the world." A little sacrifice. I could hear my voice rising shrill with disbelief. "Mom, this is my hair. I've been growing it my entire life. And maybe it's time for a change," she said, her tone sharpening. "Honestly, honey, you're 23 now. Hair that long is for teenagers. It's starting to look a little gruffy." Asterisk gruffy. Asterisk, the word so random and ugly felt like a punch to the gut. My hair was many things, but it was not gruffy. It was meticulously conditioned, oiled, and brushed. "It's not gruffy," I said through gritted teeth. My dad, drawn by the commotion, appeared in the doorway from the kitchen. "What's all the yelling?" "Aubrey is refusing to be a good sister," Sarah sobbed into Mom's shoulder. "She's being selfish," Mom added, glaring at me. "Sarah just wants to have one perfect day." My dad looked from my sister's tear-streaked face to my defiant one. He sighed, the sound of a man who just wanted peace. "Aubrey, come on. Is this really the hill you want to die on? Your hair? You know what employers think of unconventional looks? A nice professional haircut would probably do you some good in the long run." I stared at them. My mother, my father, my sister. A united front. And they weren't just attacking my hair anymore. They were attacking my maturity, my professionalism, my character. The room felt like it was closing in, the air thick with their judgment. It was high school all over again. But this wasn't a jealous friend in the locker room. This was my family. This was my blood. And in their eyes, I saw it. The same green-tinged monster that had lived in Megan's heart. Sarah couldn't stand the thought of me getting any attention, even incidental attention, on her big day. And my parents were enabling it. "I'm not doing it," I said, my voice shaking with a rage so pure it was almost clarifying. "And I'm not coming to a wedding where I'm considered a problem to be solved." I turned and walked out. I grabbed my purse from the entryway, didn't bother with my jacket, and left the apartment, the sound of Sarah's renewed wailing following me down the hall. The fallout was immediate and brutal. My phone started buzzing before I even reached my car. A text from my mom. "Times. You have broken your sister's heart. You need to apologize and fix this, asterisk." Then my dad. "Times. Don't be childish, Aubrey. Call your sister, asterisk." Then a group chat I didn't know existed with my aunts and cousins suddenly lit up. My Aunt Carol times Sarah is beside herself. I can't believe you'd be so selfish over something as silly as hair. Asterisk. They were twisting the story, painting me as the villain who was throwing a tantrum to steal the spotlight. The irony was suffocating. I drove home in a daze, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I blocked their numbers one by one, the silence in my apartment a welcome, if lonely, reprieve. For a week I was a ghost. I'd wake up, go to work, come home, and stare at the walls. The doubt started to creep in during the quiet hours of the night. Were they right? Was I being selfish? It was just hair. Was I really throwing away my relationship with my entire family for the sake of vanity? I'd stand in front of the mirror holding the golden mass of it in my hands. And for the first time I'd see what they saw: a burden. A problem. Then one morning I woke up from a dream where I was bald, my scalp cold and exposed, and I felt a phantom sense of loss so profound it made me gasp. And I knew. It wasn't about the hair. It was about them trying to cut away a piece of me times to make themselves more comfortable. It was about control. And I decided I was done being their problem. I was going to be my own solution. I spent the next 2 weeks planning. I cashed in some savings. I called a photographer I'd admired for years, a woman known for her ethereal, almost magical portrait work. I booked a session with a hairstylist who specialized in braids and artistic styling, not cutting. On the day of Sarah's wedding, I didn't sit at home and cry. I woke up at dawn and drove to a secluded botanical garden. For 3 hours, the stylist worked, weaving tiny iridescent pearls and delicate gold chains through my hair, crafting it into a masterpiece of flowing, intricate braids that looked like something out of a fairy tale. The photographer positioned me in the golden morning light, my hair fanned out around me on a bed of moss, cascading over the side of an old stone bench, gleaming against the deep red of the velvet dress I'd bought. I felt powerful. I felt beautiful. I felt like myself. At exactly 2 p.m., the time Sarah was scheduled to walk down the aisle, I posted the first photo. It was a close-up, the light catching the pearls woven into the intricate braids, my face serene. The caption was simple. Asterisk, some things are a part of you. Not for others to judge, or to demand, or to change, but for you to cherish. Self-love is a promise you make to yourself, not a sacrifice you make for someone else. Asterisk. My phone lit up. This time it wasn't with angry text from blocked numbers. It was a flood of comments and likes from friends, old classmates, and extended family who weren't in the toxic inner circle. Asterisk, Aubrey. This is the most beautiful picture I've ever seen. Asterisk. Asterisk. Your hair is a work of art. Asterisk. Asterisk, that caption, wow. Good for you. Asterisk. I posted another. And another. Each one showcasing the hair they called gruffy and childish as the one-of-a-kind spectacular feature it was. I didn't mention the wedding. I didn't mention Sarah. I didn't have to. I was no longer the villain of my sister's story. I was the hero of my own. And I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my bones that my photos would be the ones everyone was talking about tomorrow. Mark and I had a 5-year plan. It was spreadsheets and automatic transfers, and saying no to a lot of fancy dinners. The goal, a wedding. Not just any wedding, but times our times wedding. The one with the 100-year-old oak tree. We'd get married under the string quartet playing movie scores and a ridiculously expensive photographer to capture it all. Every dollar was earned, every detail agonized over. When I finally found my dress a cascade of lace and tiny hand-sewn pearls, I cried. Not because I was getting married, but because the dream we had sketched out on a napkin 5 years ago was finally tangibly real. My younger sister Stacy took a different approach. She met Kevin, a guy with a charming smile, and not much else, and 6 months later they were at the courthouse. I was her witness. She wore a white sundress from Marshall's. It was efficient. She seemed happy enough, but I always caught a wistful look in her eye whenever I talked about my own wedding plans. It started innocently. We were grabbing coffee, and I was showing her the mock-ups for our floral arrangements. "It's all so beautiful, Laura," she said, tracing the picture of a peony on my laptop screen. "Just magical. We've been saving forever for this magic," I laughed. She sighed, a deep, heavy sound that didn't fit her usual bubbly personality. "I just wish I'd had a moment. You know, one real magical bridal moment. Kevin and I were so rushed. We just wanted to be married, but I missed all this." She gestured vaguely at my screen. I felt a pang of sympathy. "You can always do a vow renewal for your 10-year anniversary. We could plan a huge party." Her eyes lit up, but not in the way I expected. "I have a better idea." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "What if I just had my moment at your wedding?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" "Like a special dance with Kevin." "No," she said, her grin widening. "I mean, what if I walk down the aisle too, in a dress? You get your turn and then I get mine. A sister act wedding." I burst out laughing. A loud snorting laugh that made the guy at the next table look over. "Oh my God, Stace. That's hilarious. For a second there I thought you were serious." Her smile froze. The light in her eyes flickered and went out. "I am serious, Lauren." The laughter died in my throat. I looked at her and saw she wasn't joking. The silence stretched thick and awkward. "Stacy, no. That's not a thing. You can't be a bride at my wedding." "Why not?" She shot back, her voice suddenly sharp. "It's one walk down an aisle. It wouldn't take anything away from you. You'd still be the main bride, obviously. I just want to feel that feeling. You know, everyone looking at me in a beautiful white dress." I was so flabbergasted, I couldn't even form a coherent sentence. I think I just stammered something about it being my and Mark's day before making an excuse about a vendor call and practically running out of the coffee shop. I figured she was having a weird moment. A quarter-life crisis, maybe. I was sure she'd text me later, laughing it off. The text I got an hour later was a picture. It was a screenshot from a bridal website. A simple, elegant A-line gown. The message underneath read times. "What do you think of this one for my walk? I think it's simple enough not to upstage you XX*." My blood ran cold. This wasn't a weird moment. This was a plan. I called her immediately. "Stacy, what the hell was that text? We are not doing this." "Don't be like that," she whined. "I'm your sister. I just want one small thing. A 5-minute walk." "No," my voice was louder than I intended. "The answer is no. It's insane that you're even asking." I hung up my hand, shaking. That I thought would be the end of it. I was so wrong. The next day my mom called. "Lauren, honey, I spoke to your sister. She's heartbroken." "Mom, you can't possibly think her idea is reasonable." "Well," she began in that placating tone she uses when she's about to completely invalidate my feelings. It is a little unconventional. But she's your only sister. She made a mistake rushing her own wedding, and she just wants a do-over. You're getting this huge perfect day. Would it really kill you to share a tiny piece of it? A tiny piece. Mom, she wants to walk down the aisle in a wedding dress. I could feel my voice rising, my cheeks getting hot. This isn't sharing. This is hijacking. Don't be a bridezilla, Lauren. Family helps family. She's just asking for a moment. It was like talking to a brick wall. A brick wall that thought I was the selfish one. The conversation ended with her sighing about my lack of compassion and me hanging up before I screamed. Then came the text from Kevin, Stacy's husband. Asterisk. Not cool what you're doing to Stacy. She gave you her blessing to have this big fancy party, even though it makes her feel bad about our wedding, and you can't even give her one little thing. Some sister you are. Asterisk. My jaw dropped. He was trying to guilt trip me for having the wedding Mark and I had paid for ourselves. For making his wife feel bad because we hadn't settled for a 10-minute ceremony with a justice of the peace. The audacity was staggering. The pressure was constant. Every day brought a new text, a new call, a new guilt trip. Stacy would send me more dress pictures. My mom would call to tell me how Stacy was crying all the time. I started screening their calls. My wedding, this beautiful thing I had been building for years, was starting to feel tainted, coated in a layer of family drama and resentment. I felt like I was going crazy. Was I the selfish one? Was I the a-hole for wanting my own wedding day to be about me and my future husband? The breaking point came on a Friday night. Mark and I had just opened a bottle of wine and were finalizing our seating chart. It was the first moment of peaceful, happy wedding planning I'd had in a week. Then a knock on the door. It was Stacy and Kevin. They had a Tupperware container of cookies and fake smiles plastered on their faces. An ambush. We were in the neighborhood, Stacy chirped, pushing past me into our apartment. They made small talk for a few minutes while my stomach twisted into a knot. Mark, bless his oblivious heart, was just happy to see them. Then Stacy made her move. She turned to Mark, her eyes wide and glistening with unshed tears. Mark, I need your help. I asked Lauren for a very small favor for the wedding, and she's treating me like I'm a monster. Mark looked from her to me, confused. A favor? What's up? Stacy took a deep breath, clutching Kevin's hand for dramatic effect. I regret not having a real wedding so much. I asked Lauren if after she has her walk, I could have a turn. Just a quick walk down the aisle in a white dress, so I can have that bridal moment I never got. She looked at him, her expression a perfect blend of hope and pathetic desperation. She thought he would be the easy Mark, the calm, reasonable one who would talk his crazy bridezilla fiance down. Mark stared at her for a beat. Then he tipped his head back and laughed. A big, booming, genuine laugh, just like I had. A Sister Act wedding, he chuckled, wiping a tear from his eye. Stacy, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard. You almost had me. Stacy's face crumpled. Kevin's jaw tightened, and he stood up. It's not a joke, man. Mark's laughter stopped. He looked from Kevin's furious face to Stacy's tear-streaked one and then to me. His smile vanished. Wait, he said, his voice flat with disbelief. You're serious? The atmosphere in the room turned to ice. Stacy let out a sob. You see, she cried, pointing a trembling finger at me. You've turned him against me, too. You're both just cruel. All I wanted was one moment, And you're laughing at me. Kevin wrapped his arm around her. Come on, babe. Let's go. We're not welcome here. He shot me a look of pure venom. I hope you're happy, Lauren. You got your perfect wedding, and all it cost you was your family. They stormed out, slamming the door behind them. Mark and I were left standing in the silence, the seating chart completely forgotten. He wrapped his arms around me, but I felt numb. They had cornered us in our own home. They had tried to manipulate my fiancé. They had called me cruel and selfish over and over until a tiny part of me almost started to believe it. That was it. I was done being the victim in my own wedding story. I pulled away from Mark. My mind suddenly clear. A cold, hard resolve settled in my chest. This wasn't going to be solved with tearful phone calls or angry texts. This required a final, definitive showdown. I pulled out my phone, my fingers flying across the screen. I created a group chat. Me, Mark, Stacy, and Kevin. Asterisk brunch. Sunday, 11 a.m. My treat times, I type. Asterisk. We are settling this once and for all. Asterisk. I barely slept for 2 days. Mark kept telling me to let it go, that he'd handle it, but he couldn't. This was my family, my sister. This was my mess to clean up. We got to the brunch spot first. I picked a table on the patio tucked into a corner. It was bright and loud, full of people laughing over mimosas. The opposite of how I felt inside. Stacy and Kevin arrived a few minutes later. He had a proprietary arm around her shoulders, guiding her like a prize fighter. She wouldn't meet my eye. They sat, and a waitress immediately appeared. "Can I get you all started with some drinks?" she asked, chipper and oblivious. "Mimosas for us," Kevin said, gesturing between himself and Stacy. "Just water for me," I said. Mark echoed me. I needed a clear head. The moment the waitress left, I put my hands flat on the table. Okay. We're not ordering food until we're done. No more texts, no more surprise visits, no more phone calls to mom. We are finishing this right now. Kevin smirked. Good. So you're finally going to be reasonable and let your sister have her 5 minutes of fame. I ignored him, looking directly at Stacy. Stace, I love you. You're my sister and my best friend. But the answer is no. It will always be no. Her face hardened. Because you're selfish. No, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Because you're asking me to set a match to the single most expensive, important, and personal day of my life so you can play dress up. You are a married woman. You had a wedding. It might not have been this wedding, but it was yours. This one is mine. And Mark's. It's just a walk, she pleaded, her voice cracking. Kevin and I never got to. Stop, Mark cut in, his voice low and firm. It was the first time he'd spoken. Just stop, both of you. This isn't about you not getting a walk, Kevin. This is about you being jealous that we can afford the wedding you couldn't. The shot landed. Kevin's face turned a blotchy red. You have no idea what you're talking about. Don't I? Mark leaned forward. You've been making snide comments about our fancy party for months. You convinced my fiancé's sister that she's a victim because we saved our money. You want to spoil our day because it makes you feel better about your own choices. He's not, Stacy started. But the protest died on her lips. I'm not the one on trial here, I said, pulling our focus back. I am. Apparently, I'm a cruel, selfish bridezilla. My own mother thinks so. My own sister thinks so. I pulled out my phone and set it on the table. Since my feelings and Mark's feelings didn't seem to matter, I decided to ask for an outside opinion. I'd spent all of Saturday writing it out. Every detail. The request, the dress photos, Mom's phone calls, Kevin's text, the ambush in our apartment. I posted it on Reddit. I wrote down everything that's happened and posted it anonymously online. I said, my voice steady. I asked thousands of complete strangers a simple question. Am I the asshole for not letting my married sister have a second bridal march at my wedding? Stacy stared at the phone like it was a snake. Kevin scoffed. Oh, please. You probably twisted the whole story. I didn't have to, I said, tapping the screen and turning it towards them. I scrolled, letting them see the title, the post, and then the replies. Hundreds of them, then thousands. Asterisk NTA. Your sister and her husband are unhinged. Asterisk. Asterisk. This is the most narcissistic request I have ever heard. Asterisk. Asterisk, uninvite all of them. Your mom, your sister, her leech of a husband. Set fire to the whole relationship. Asterisk. Asterisk. Your sister needs to get a grip. This is your day. She is already married. Asterisk. I kept scrolling. Comment after comment, a tidal wave of unanimous judgment, all aimed directly at them. I didn't have to say a word. The screen said it all. Stacy's breath hitched. A single tear rolled down her cheek, then another. Kevin grabbed the phone, his eyes scanning frantically, looking for a single comment in their favor. There wasn't one. This is bullshit, he spat, shoving the phone back across the table. A bunch of losers on the internet. But the damage was done. Stacy wasn't looking at him. She was looking at me, her face crumbling into a mask of pure misery. They're right, aren't they? She whispered. The sound was so small I barely heard it over the patio chatter. It's insane. The whole thing. She dropped her face into her hands, her shoulders shaking with huge silent sobs. Stacy, babe, don't listen to them, Kevin said, trying to pull her hands away from her face. No, she shrieked, yanking away from him. Her head snapped up, her eyes wild and red-rimmed, and she pointed a shaking finger at him. This was you. This was all you. Kevin looked stunned. What are you talking about? You couldn't stand it, she sobbed. You couldn't stand that Lauren and Mark had this perfect life, this perfect wedding. Every time she'd show me a picture of the venue or the flowers, you'd whisper in my ear later. Doesn't that make you sad? Don't you wish you had that? She should share it with you. You're her sister. She owes you. The confession hung in the air, ugly and raw. And Mom, Stacy turned her glare on me, though the anger was gone, replaced by desperation. She just egged him on. She said I deserved a do-over, and that your wedding was the perfect opportunity. They made me feel so small, Laura. So pathetic for my little courthouse wedding. They made me believe I was entitled to a piece of yours. Kevin stood up so fast, his chair screeched against the stone patio. I was just trying to stand up for my wife. No, I said, standing to meet his gaze. My voice was ice. You were trying to ruin my wedding. You saw her insecurity and you weaponized it to soothe your own fragile ego. You are a poison, Kevin. I pulled my wallet out and threw two 20s on the table. Get out. He stared at me, then at Stacy, who refused to look at him. With a final disgusted sneer, he turned and stormed away, pushing past the waitress who was cautiously approaching with their mimosas. The moment he was gone, all the fight went out of Stacy. She just sat there weeping into her hands. Mark squeezed my shoulder, then nodded. I'll get the car, he said, leaving us alone. I sat down next to my sister in the chair Kevin had abandoned. I put my arm around her shaking shoulders, and she collapsed against me, crying like she had when we were kids and she'd scraped her knee. I'm so sorry, Laura, she choked out between sobs. I'm so sorry. I ruined everything. Shh. No, you didn't, I whispered, rubbing her back. You just let the wrong people get in your head. We sat like that for a long time, the sounds of brunch fading into the background. Finally, her sobs quieted. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. He's not invited, obviously. I don't even know if I can go home to him. You can stay with us as long as you need, I said without hesitation. A wave of relief washed over her face. I took a deep breath. There was one last thing to do. One last piece to fix. Stace, I said, taking her hands. I still want you at my wedding. More than anyone. She shook her head. I can't. I'd be too ashamed. No, listen to me. I squeezed her hands tight. I don't have Dad to walk me down the aisle. I was going to do it alone. But I don't want to. Her eyes widened, confusion mixing with dawning understanding. I want you to walk with me, I said, my own tears finally starting to fall. Not as a bride, as my sister, my maid of honor, in a gorgeous dress that matches the bridesmaids standing by my side. Will you please walk down the aisle with me, Stacy? Her breath caught in a sob, but this time it was different. It was a sound of release, of grace. She threw her arms around my neck, burying her face in my shoulder. Yes, she whispered. Oh my God, Laura. Yes. In that moment, nestled in the corner of a noisy patio surrounded by the wreckage of a terrible idea, we found our way back. The wedding wasn't tainted anymore. If anything, it was stronger. It was a day we had fought for, not just financially, but emotionally. And when I pictured myself walking towards that 100-year-old oak tree, I no longer saw myself walking alone. I saw my sister right there by my side. My 18th birthday party was a masterclass in emotional whiplash. My mom baked my favorite chocolate cake, the one with the thick fudgy icing. My dad gave me a firm one-armed hug and a crisp card. Inside was a check for $5,000. Happy birthday, son, he said, his voice full of manufactured gravity. Consider it a head start for your future. I was floored. $5,000 was a fortune. I started babbling about a down payment on a used car, textbooks for college, maybe even a new computer. My parents smiled and nodded, letting me dream for a full 60 seconds before my mom sliced the first piece of cake and delivered the knockout blow. And speaking of the future, she said, her voice unnervingly cheerful, your rent will be $500 a month starting on the 1st. Time to pull your own weight. I stared at her, the fork halfway to my mouth. My rent. Of course, Dad chimed in, taking a bite of cake. You're an adult now. This is how the real world works. My brother David, then a pimply 1-2-year-old, snickered from across the table. My sister Chloe 10 just looked confused. The check in my hand suddenly felt less like a gift and more like a severance package. 10 months. I had 10 months before my Head Start was gone, paid directly back to the people who gave it to me. The real world, it turned out, was brutal. While my friends were enjoying their last summer of freedom, I was bagging groceries and bussing tables. College started and the pressure cooker was on full blast. I worked 2, sometimes 3 part-time jobs while juggling a full course load. I lived on instant noodles and cheap coffee, fueled by scholarships I spent every spare hour applying for. Meanwhile, life back at the family home was a different story. David and Chloe were never asked for a dime. When Chloe went to a private university 4 years later, my parents proudly announced they were covering her tuition. All of it. David, who decided college wasn't for him, just stayed. To this day, at 26, he still lives in his childhood bedroom rent-free. His biggest contribution to the household being the weekly mowing of the lawn. My relationship with my parents evaporated. It wasn't one big fight. It was a slow, agonizing death by 1,000 cuts. Every time I called home exhausted and stressed, the conversation was the same. You sound tired, Benjamin. I am, Mom. I worked a double last night and have a midterm in an hour. Well, nobody said it would be easy. This is building character. They never asked if I needed anything. They never offered a single dollar after that first check. The few times I visited, I felt like a stranger. They talk about the family cruise they took, the new car they bought Chloe for graduation, the gaming system they got David for Christmas. I just nod, the taste of cheap ramen still lingering in my mouth. By the time I graduated with honors and a mountain of student loans they knew nothing about, we were communicating through a perfunctory phone call on birthdays and Christmas. 16 years of that. Now I'm 34. I have a career, I'm proud of a condo overlooking the city, and a fiancée, Anna, who is the best thing that has ever happened to me. She's the one who convinced me to send them an invitation. They're still your family. She'd said, her hand gently rubbing my back as I hovered over the send button on the digital invite. Maybe this is a chance to, I don't know, start over. So I sent it. A beautiful minimalist invitation with a photo of Anna and me laughing on the coast. I sent it, and for 2 weeks I heard nothing. No RSVP. No text. Just silence. I was almost relieved. It was the answer I expected. Then last night my phone rang. It was my mother. Benjamin, she began, no preamble. No hello. Her voice was tight, coiled like a spring. Your father and I received your announcement. It's a wedding invitation, Mom. We're aware, she snapped. The question is, why is this the first we're hearing of any of it? I had to find out my own son was engaged from a piece of stationery. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that is? I took a deep breath, pinching the bridge of my nose. Anna looked over from the couch, her expression worried. Mom, we haven't really talked in years. I figured an invitation was the appropriate way to let you know. Appropriate, I could hear my dad pick up the extension. His voice boomed in my ear. There's nothing appropriate about this, son. Your mother should have been involved. Helping Anna pick her dress, tasting cakes, looking at venues with you. We're your parents. I almost laughed. It was so absurd, so completely detached from our reality. Involved? You haven't been involved in my life since I was 18. You haven't met Anna. You don't know my address. You want to taste cakes, but you couldn't be bothered to ask what I do for a living. There was a pause. I thought for a fleeting second that I might have gotten through to them. I was wrong. "Oh, don't be so dramatic," my mother said, her voice dripping with dismissive condescension. "You're still holding on to that. We were doing what we thought was best. We made some mistakes, fine. But that's all in the past. You need to get over it. We're family. Get over it." The words caught in my throat. The rage was a physical thing, hot and metallic, rising in my chest. You taught me what family meant the day you started charging me rent. You showed me what it meant when you paid for Chloe's entire education and let David live off you his whole life. That's not in the past, Mom. That's a choice you made and you keep making. That's completely different, my father blustered. Our financial situation was better then. You should be proud of the independence we taught you. Proud, I finally did laugh, a hollow, bitter sound. You didn't teach me independence, you abandoned me. You cashed me out for $5,000 and washed your hands of me. And now you have the audacity to be angry. You're not a bigger part of the wedding. A wedding you wouldn't be invited to at all if it wasn't for Anna's goodwill. You watch your tone, Benjamin, my mother warned, her voice dangerously quiet. We are your parents, and we deserve respect. We deserve to be a central part of our firstborn's wedding day. It's what we're owed. Owed. The word hung in the air between us, sparking like a downed power line. All the years of struggle, of feeling like a ghost in my own family, of watching my siblings get the life I could have only dreamed of, it all coalesced around that single monumentally entitled word. You are owed nothing, I said, my voice as cold and sharp as broken glass. My mother started to shout something about disrespect and filial duty, but I wasn't listening anymore. An idea was forming in my mind, a terrible, beautiful, and perfectly petty idea. A way to finally make them understand. A way to speak their language. The only language they'd ever truly value. Money. You're owed nothing, I repeated to the dead air, after hanging up the words, tasting like victory. I turned to Anna, whose eyes were wide with a mixture of shock and awe. Wow was all she said. Wow is right, I replied, a slow, predatory grin spreading across my face. Get the laptop. For the next hour, we weren't planning a wedding. We were conducting an audit of my forgotten childhood. I pulled up my old bank statements, the university's tuition archive, and Zillow for historical rent estimates in my parents' neighborhood. It was a macabre scavenger hunt through the life I was forced to build myself. Okay, I said, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Rent. They charged me $500 a month. I stayed for 10 months before I moved into the dorms, so that's $5,000 right there. The exact head start they gave me. Anna jotted it down on a notepad. Poetic. Now let's calculate what they should have been paying for based on the David and Chloe model. I created a spreadsheet, simple and brutal. *** line item 1, university tuition and fees. *** Chloe went to a private college that cost roughly $40,000 a year. I went to a state school. Let's be generous and use my in-state tuition rate. 4 years. Total $50,000 cents. ** line item 2, housing and utilities. ** David, at 26, still lives at home for free. Let's calculate the fair market rent for a room in their house from age 18 to 22, the years I was in college. We settled on a conservative $600 a month. 48 months. Total $28,800. ** line item 3, food and groceries. ** I put down a modest $300 a month for 4 years. Total $14,400. Asterisk line item for health insurance. Asterisk they dropped me from their plan the month I turned 18. I paid for a catastrophic plan through the university. Total $4,800. Asterisk line item. 5 first car. Asterisk they bought Chloe a brand new Civic for graduation. Let's go with a used one for me. A generous KBB value. Total $15,000. The grand total sat at the bottom of the screen glowing in bold font. Asterisk. $115. 800. Asterisk. I attached the spreadsheet to a new email. The subject line times wedding contribution asterisk. The body was short. Mom, Dad. Asterisk. You mentioned you feel you're owed a central role in my wedding and by extension my life. I agree. True involvement is an investment. Asterisk. Asterisk attached is an itemized invoice for the financial support you provided for David and Chloe that was denied to me. This is the cost of the character you were so proud of building. Consider it back pay for the 16 years of emotional and financial estrangement. Asterisk. If you want to be involved as the parents you claim to be, you need to ante up. Once this invoice is paid, we can discuss your role in the wedding planning. Asterisk. Looking forward to hearing from you. Asterisk. Benjamin. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The silence in the apartment was deafening for a moment, then Anna burst out laughing. You are an absolute menace. They speak the language of money, I said, closing the laptop. So I spoke their language. My phone rang less than 10 minutes later. It was my father. I put him on speaker. Is this a joke? He roared, no greeting. Not at all, I said calmly. It's an invoice. Did you receive it? $115,000, my mother shrieked from the background. Have you lost your mind, Benjamin? I think my math is pretty solid, I said. I was even conservative on the rent. We don't have that kind of money. Dad yelled, his voice cracking with panic. You know that we can't just write you a check for that amount. And then came the line. The perfect, hypocritical, gloriously ironic line I knew was coming but was still breathtaking to hear. Why not? I asked, feigning innocence. Because my mother sputtered, having grabbed the phone. Because we're still paying off the loans we took out for Chloe's education. And we're supporting David. We don't have anything left. I couldn't help it. I started to laugh. Not a hollow, bitter laugh like before, but a deep, genuine belly laugh. The kind that makes your eyes water. The absurdity was just too perfect. They couldn't afford to pay me back for the support they never gave me because they were still paying for the support they freely gave my siblings. It was a snake eating its own tail of favoritism. Ben, are you laughing? My dad asked, confused. I am, I said, wiping a tear from my eye. I really am. Don't worry about the bill. I never expected you to pay it. I just wanted you to see it. Now you know the price of the relationship you're demanding. I took a breath. The invitation stands. You can come to my wedding as guests. That's the offer. Take it or leave it. I do hope to see you there. I hung up before they could respond. The fallout was nuclear. The next day, the calls started. First, it was my Aunt Carol, my mother's sister. "I cannot believe you would send your parents a bill," she said, her voice dripping with sanctimony. "After everything they've done for you. They are so hurt." "Aunt Carol," I said, my voice flat. "Did they also send you a copy of the bill, or just their version of the story?" Silence. "That's what I thought. You don't know anything about my relationship with them. This is between me and them." I hung up. Next was my uncle, my dad's brother, who left a rambling 2-minute voicemail about the importance of family and how I was being cruel and materialistic. I deleted it without listening to the end. My cousin sent me a long, sanctimonious text. I blocked his number. They were flying monkeys dispatched to enforce the family narrative where my parents were the benevolent victims and I was the ungrateful, monstrous child. But their words didn't touch me. For the first time, I felt shielded by the truth so clear and quantifiable it was on a spreadsheet. Anna was my rock. She fielded a call from another aunt and calmly said Ben's parents decided to sever financial and emotional ties with him when he was 18. He's simply honoring their decision. If they want to renegotiate the terms of their relationship, Ben has made the buy-in cost clear. The aunt was speechless. I never wanted the money. I had my own. What I wanted was for them to see. To hold the number in their hands and feel the weight of their choices. The bill wasn't a demand for payment. It was a receipt for 16 years of neglect. In the end, they didn't pay. They didn't apologize. They didn't even call back. They just checked attending on the wedding website. 2 seats. On the day of the wedding, I saw them. They were sitting in the 4th row on the bride's side, as far from the front as possible without being in the absolute back. They looked small and out of place. My father wore an ill-fitting suit, and my mother was clutching her purse like a life raft. They didn't try to come to the dressing room. They didn't demand a special role in the ceremony. During the reception, they kept to themselves, speaking quietly to the few relatives who had braved the family schism to attend. Late in the evening, as Anna and I were making our rounds, we came to their table. "Benjamin," my mother said, her voice quiet. She wouldn't meet my eye. "It's a beautiful wedding." "Thank you for coming," I said. It wasn't forgiveness. It was just a fact. My dad just nodded, looking at his half-eaten piece of cake. "Congratulations, son." And that was it. There was no grand confrontation, no tearful reconciliation. They were just guests. They had accepted the role they had earned. As I walked away holding my wife's hand, I felt a profound sense of peace. The ledger was balanced. I didn't get the parents I might have deserved, but I had finally gotten the space I needed. They could have their yearly phone calls. I had Anna. I had my life. I was finally completely independent. And it had cost them nothing but the one thing they thought they were owed for free me. The family didn't just break. It was detonated. The blast zone was my mother, and the fuse was her second husband, Jacques. When she married him, my brother Maurice and I were cautiously optimistic. We just wanted her to be happy. But Jacques came with baggage, a 10-year-old son named Henri. From day one, Henri was a walking, whining monument to entitlement. The kid had never been told no in his life, and he saw Maurice and me not as new brothers, but as competition. The first real crack appeared at Christmas. My grandparents, Mom's parents always went all out. That year they got Maurice and me new bikes. High-end multi-speed mountain bikes we'd been dreaming of. Henri got a top-of-the-line video game console, something his own father Jacques had specifically requested. It wasn't a cheap gift. But when Henri saw our bikes, his face curdled. He didn't just pout. He launched into a full-scale tantrum, screaming that it wasn't fair that Grandpa and Grandma loved us more. Jacques, instead of parenting his son, just watched with a smug little smirk. It was my mother who swooped in, coddling Henri and shooting us a look that said, "Can't you just have less?" This became the pattern. Every holiday, every birthday, Henri would audit the gift exchange like a tiny, wrathful IRS agent. He'd tally up the perceived value of our presents from our grandparents and pitch a fit if his haul didn't measure up. Jacques would just stroke his goatee and look pointedly at my mother, who would then pull us aside and ask us to be more sensitive to Henri's feelings. The pressure campaign culminated a few months later. Jacques, who had been whispering in Mom's ear for weeks, finally made his move. Mom drove over to our grandparents' house alone. Maurice and I found out what happened later that night, piecing it together from her tearful rage and a grim, tight-lipped phone call from Grandpa. She had given him an ultimatum delivered on behalf of her new husband. Jacques feels Henri isn't being treated like a true member of the family, she'd said. He's your grandson now, too. You need to treat him exactly the same as James and Maurice. My grandfather was a man carved from granite and stubbornness. He built a construction business from nothing, and he didn't suffer fools. He despised Jacques' soft hands and Henri's whining. Your husband's boy is welcome in my home, he told her, his voice low and final. He will be treated with respect as a guest. But he is not my blood. He is not my grandson. I will not pretend he is. Then you're making me choose, she'd cried. No, Helen, Grandpa corrected her. Your husband is making you choose. You're just letting him. She chose. The next day, she told us we wouldn't be seeing our grandparents anymore. It was for the best, she said, to present a united family front. Maurice, who was 16 and already had a spine of his own, just stared at her. You're joking, right? She wasn't. For the next 8 years, we lived a double life. We saw our grandparents in secret. We'd coordinate drop-offs with my grandmother at the library or a coffee shop like we were spies in a low-budget thriller. We'd spend weekends at their house under the guise of staying at a friend's place. It was a secret we kept, flawlessly fueled by our love for them and a growing resentment for the woman who forced us into it. She had traded her parents for a whiny brat and a man who looked at her like she was an asset he'd acquired. The charade shattered when Grandpa got sick. Lung cancer. It was fast and brutal. By the time we knew how serious it was, he was already in hospice. I was away at college, a 3-hour drive away. I got the call from Grandma on a Thursday night. He's asking for you, James. The doctor says it's time. I threw my stuff in a bag and called my mom on the road, knowing I'd have to go through her to get the hospice details. It was a mistake. You are not going, she said, her voice cold and sharp. You will not disrespect your family this way. My family, Grandpa, is my family. He's dying, I was screaming into the phone, weaving through traffic. Your loyalty is here. With Jacques and Henri, you will not upset them by running off to see a man who refused to accept them. She wouldn't give me the address. She wouldn't tell me which hospital. She hung up on me. I tried calling Maurice, but he was already there. I tried my grandmother, but her phone went straight to voicemail. My mother had effectively blocked me from saying goodbye to my own grandfather. He died the next morning. I didn't hear from her for 3 days. The first contact was a text. Time's funeral is Tuesday. Jacques and Henri will be there to support me. Asterisk. That's when my grandmother, a woman who had spent 60 years as a gentle, patient soul, finally went nuclear. She called my mother, and I was in the room to hear the half of the conversation that mattered. Grandma's voice, usually so soft, was like cracking ice. "Helen, listen to me very carefully," she said. "There was no greeting. You are not welcome at his funeral. The man you are married to is an ogre, and his son is a spoiled runt. They poisoned you against your own father, and I will not have them standing over his grave." There was a pause. I could almost hear my mother's sputtering indignation through the phone. "There is one way, and one way only you can come, Grandma," continued, her voice trembling with a rage I'd never heard before. "You show up alone. You walk to his casket, and you get on your knees, and you apologize to him. You apologize for your weakness. You apologize for what you let them do to our family. You do that, and you may stay. Otherwise, I will have you removed. Am I clear?" My mother refused. She didn't come to the funeral. She and my grandmother never spoke another word to each other. That was 10 years ago. Maurice and I took care of Grandma. We spent every holiday with her, filled her house with life, and tried our best to fill the space my mother had left behind. 2 days ago, we lost her too. She passed peacefully in her sleep in the house she'd shared with Grandpa for half a century. Maurice and I were sitting at her kitchen table last night, surrounded by a mountain of paperwork and a silence that felt heavier than stone. We were making lists, figuring out the funeral home, the 100 tiny awful tasks that come with death. My phone sat on the table between us, a silent black rectangle. Suddenly, it buzzed, skittering across the wood. We both flinched. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in a decade. A name that felt like a ghost. Mom. My thumb hovered over the screen. Maurice just shook his head, his eyes hard. "Don't," he mouthed. But I had to. I don't know why. Morbid curiosity, maybe. A stupid flickering ember of hope that after all this time she might finally say the right thing. I swiped to answer and put it on speaker. "Hello," I said. My voice was rough. Silence. Then her voice, as if no time had passed at all. "No, I'm so sorry." "No, are you okay?" Not even a simple "I heard about Grandma." Just a cold clinical declaration. "I'm flying in tomorrow. I need to start managing the estate." For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Maurice and I just stared at each other across the table, the phone between us like a live grenade. Her words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Asterisk managing the estate. Asterisk not times I'm so sorry for your loss. Asterisk not times. How are you holding up times? Just pure predatory avarice. Maurice reached over, his hand closing on the phone. He didn't take it from me, just angled it closer to his mouth. His voice was flat, devoid of any emotion. It was colder than her declaration. "There's nothing to manage, Helen." He used her first name. He hadn't called her mom in a decade. But hearing her given name from his lips was still a shock. It was the sound of a final door slamming shut. "What are you talking about, Maurice?" She snapped, the phony managerial tone already cracking. "It's Grandma's house, the savings. Someone has to handle it." "It's handled," Maurice said. "Grandma and Grandpa made their arrangements years ago. We're the executors." He paused, letting the silence stretch just long enough to be uncomfortable. "And we're the sole beneficiaries." A sharp, incredulous laugh crackled through the speaker. "That's ridiculous. I'm her daughter. Of course I'm in the will. No. Maurice said, his voice dropping lower. You're not. The will is very specific. It states, and I'm paraphrasing, that everything is to be left to their grandsons James and Maurice, who were the only ones who stood by them. It also explicitly states that you, Jacques and Henri, are to receive nothing. Not a dime. Not a photograph. Not a goddamn teaspoon. The silence that followed was heavy and violent. I could picture her perfectly, the pinched face, the tightening jaw, the look of utter disbelief that the world wasn't bending to her will. When she finally spoke, her voice was completely different. The cold business persona was gone, replaced by a syrupy, wounded tone she knew all too well. It was the voice she used when she wanted to manipulate us. I can't believe this, she whimpered. After everything. Fine. Fine. I don't care about the money. I never did. I want to be there. For the funeral. I need to say goodbye. I need to make things right. Asterisk, make things right. Asterisk. The phrase hit me like a physical blow. It was a lie so transparent it was insulting. But it was also an opening. I took the phone from Maurice's hand. You want to make things right? I asked. Yes, James, she said, her voice full of false sincerity. More than anything. Okay, I said, leaning forward. Then we'll give you the same chance Grandma gave you 10 years ago. What? What are you talking about? The funeral is on Saturday, I said, my voice as steady as I could make it. You are welcome to come. But you will come alone. Jacques is not welcome. Henri is not welcome. If they set one foot on the property, we will have them escorted off. Is that clear? I could hear her sharp intake of breath. You can't be serious. I'm dead serious, I continued, the words feeling like stones in my mouth. You show up alone. You walk into that church, you go up to her casket, and you apologize. You apologize for choosing them over her. You apologize for letting her die without her daughter. You do that, you can stay. Those are the terms. For a beat, there was nothing. Then the mask didn't just crack. It atomized. How dare you? The shriek was so loud, I pulled the phone away from my ear. How dare you, two ungrateful little bastards, give me conditions after everything I sacrificed for you? Maurice snorted. Sacrificed. You sacrificed your parents. You sacrificed your sons. You sacrificed them for a spineless snake and his whining whelp. You made your choice a long time ago. I gave you a family, she screamed, her voice distorting through the tiny speaker. I gave you a father when you didn't have one. Jacques was never our father, I shot back, the rage I'd been suppressing for 20 years finally boiling over. He was your keeper. And Grandpa was more of a father to us in secret than Jacques ever was to our faces. You threw him away. You threw times her times away. You don't get to come back now and play the grieving daughter. You will regret this. She hissed, her voice venomous. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. That will is a lie. You manipulated an old woman. Go ahead. Maurice said, his voice laced with amusement. I'm sure it'll look great in court. Estranged daughter who hadn't spoken to her mother in a decade sues the grandsons who cared for her until the day she died. Good luck with that. That was it. The last of her control snapped. A string of curses poured out of the phone, foul, ugly words aimed at us, at our grandparents, at the memory of the life she'd torched with her own 2 hands. I didn't wait for her to finish. I just pressed the red icon on the screen, cutting her off mid-spit. The silence that fell over the kitchen was profound. It was the sound of a final, permanent ending. Maurice reached for the phone. He went to her contact, his thumb hovering for a second before pressing block. He looked at me, and I nodded. He confirmed. A tiny notification popped up times. Number blocked. Asterisk. We sat there for a long time, the quiet of my grandmother's house settling around us again. It wasn't a heavy silence anymore. It was clean, cleansed, managed the estate. I said softly, shaking my head. Yep, Maurice said, leaning back in his chair. Not a word about Grandma. Didn't even ask when she died or how. Just straight to the money. That was the tell. The blatant, undeniable red flag that proved every suspicion we'd ever had. Her desire to make things right was a Trojan horse wheeled up to the gates of our grief with an inheritance claim hidden inside. She didn't want reconciliation. She wanted restitution. We had done the right thing. Grandpa had drawn his line in the sand and Grandma had held it. Now it was our turn. We were the keepers of their legacy, the guardians of their peace. And we would be damned if we let the woman who broke their hearts dance on their graves. My grandmother is a viper in a cardigan. For my entire life, she's used words like weapons, honing in on the softest parts of people and striking without hesitation. She saves the worst of her venom for me. My brother Mark died in a car accident when he was 19. At his funeral, while I was sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe, she cornered me by the casket. She patted my hand, a fake pitying look on her face, and whispered, "It's a shame God took the good one." I was 15. I couldn't even process the cruelty. I just stood there paralyzed. Years later, my husband and I lost our first child, a daughter we named Lily, who was stillborn. It was the single most devastating event of my life. A week after we buried her, my grandmother called. There was no sympathy. Just a cold, analytical question. Well, are you going to try again, or are you just broken? That was it. That was the moment the switch flipped. The part of me that had always made excuses for her, she's from a different generation, she doesn't know what she's saying, it just died. I hung up the phone and made a decision. I was done. I went full no contact. Not the dramatic announcement-making kind. The quiet, ice-cold kind. At the next family Christmas, I walked past her like she was a piece of furniture. I didn't say hello. I didn't make eye contact. When she tried to speak to me, I turned to my mother and asked her to pass the potatoes. The silence at that end of the table was so thick you could have carved it. She didn't like being ignored. A queen needs her court, and one of her subjects refusing to bow was an act of treason. First, she sent in the flying monkeys, my cousins Jessica and David. They were her golden grandchildren, the ones who could do no wrong. They caught me at my nephew's birthday party. Janice Jessica started all fake concern. Grandma is really hurting. You're breaking her heart. Is she? I said, not looking up from wrapping a gift. David jumped in, more aggressive. You're being selfish. She's an old woman. You need to get over whatever little grudge you're holding on to and show some respect. I finally looked at him. Respect is earned, David. And she spent 30 years burning that bridge. I'm just refusing to let her rebuild it on my property. I handed the gift to my sister-in-law and walked away. When the guilt trips failed, my grandmother escalated. My phone rang late one night. It was my aunt, my grandmother's staunchest defender, sobbing hysterically. "It's Grandma," she wailed. She collapsed. "We're at the hospital. She's asking for you, Janice. The doctors don't know if she's going to make it." The old me would have dropped everything, overcome with guilt, and raced to the hospital. The new me was suspicious. "Which hospital?" I asked, my voice flat. She told me. "Okay," I said. "I'm calling the nurses' station on her floor to get an update directly. I'll call you back." The line went dead quiet. Then a sputtering. Why would you do that?" "Just get down here." "Because I don't believe you," I said, and hung up. I called the hospital. They had no patient by her name. Not in the year, not admitted, nowhere. I called my mom. Aunt Carol just called me sobbing. Said Grandma collapsed and is at Memorial. My mom sighed. "I'm looking at her right now, Janice. She's on her couch watching her game shows. Carol is in the kitchen with her. They're making tea." The sheer calculated manipulation of it all sent a shock of cold fury through me. They faked a medical emergency. They used the idea of her death as a weapon to try and drag me back into line. The family split wide open after that. Half of them, led by my aunt and my golden cousins, called me a cold-hearted bitch. The other half, led by my parents, were disgusted with my grandmother's tactics. Family gatherings became a minefield of hostile glares and whispered insults. I didn't care. The peace of not having her poison in my life was worth every bit of it. 2 years passed like this. 2 years of blessed silence. I finished my degree, pouring all that anger and frustration into my studies. I was graduating magna cum laude, and my parents decided to throw me a big BBQ to celebrate. A real party. The whole extended family was invited. I knew she'd be there, but I wasn't going to let her existence ruin my day. This was my accomplishment. The party was great. The sun was out, my friends were there. And for the first time in a long time, the family drama felt distant. My mom and dad were beaming. They brought out a cake that said "Congratulations, Janice," in bright blue icing. My favorite aunt, my dad's sister, clinked her fork against a bottle to get everyone's attention. She raised her beer. "I just want to make a toast," she said, her voice full of genuine pride. "To my niece, Janice. We all know how incredibly hard you've worked for this. To graduate with magna cum laude honors is just amazing, and we are all so proud of you." A chorus of hear and applause rippled through the backyard. I felt a rare, uncomplicated wave of happiness wash over me. I smiled, feeling the warmth of the sun and the love from the people who mattered. Then from the corner of the patio where my grandmother sat stewing in a lawn chair, a voice cut through the air like a shriek of shattering glass. Well, maybe she screamed, her voice trembling with rage, causing everyone to freeze and turn toward her. Maybe we should all show a little more respect for the ones that didn't graduate. She was staring right at me, her face a twisted mask of pure, undiluted hatred. Or for the ones who didn't waste their time and their parents' money on a useless piece of paper. The backyard went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the grass. Every eye swiveled from her, a trembling, venomous old woman, to me. This was it. The moment she'd engineered. All the attention, all the drama pointed at her, with me as the villain of her story. The old Janice would have shrunk, cried, apologized for being happy. The new Janice just set her beer down on the picnic table. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The quiet carried further than her screaming ever could. "Are you finished?" I asked. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. The shock of me not immediately dissolving into tears threw her off script. I said, I repeated, my voice calm. And cold, are you finished? Or do you have more to say about how my success is an inconvenience to you? This isn't about you, she spat, recovering. This is about respect. I laughed. A short, sharp, ugly sound. Respect? You wouldn't know respect if it bit you. You want to talk about the people who didn't graduate? Let's talk about them. Let's talk about my grandfather, your husband, the alcoholic who couldn't hold a job. The one you defended every time he hit you, every time he hit his kids. He didn't graduate. Does he get your respect? A collective gasp went through the family. No one ever spoke about my grandfather. You are a jealous, bitter woman. I continued walking slowly toward her. Her flying monkeys, Jessica and David, started to move toward her like a Secret Service detail for a tyrant. You can't stand to see anyone happy, especially me. My joy is like poison in your veins. You tried to ruin my brother's funeral. You tried to ruin the memory of my daughter. And now you're trying to ruin this. But you're failing. Do you see? You have no more power here. I stopped a few feet from her chair. I looked at her, truly looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't see a monster. I just saw a pathetic, empty old woman. Enjoy your cake, I said, then turned my back on her and walked away. The party died a quick, awkward death after that. My parents and my husband circled the wagons around me. But the damage was done. The air was too thick with toxicity to breathe. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. It was only the opening skirmish. 3 days later, I was at my parents' house helping my mom sort through some old photos for a scrapbook. There was a knock on the door. Mom went to answer it and I heard her voice drop. What are you all doing here? I walked into the living room and froze. There they were. The unholy trinity. My grandmother flanked by Jessica and David, with my Aunt Carol bringing up the rear. They looked like they were there to perform an exorcism. We're here for an intervention, my grandmother announced, sweeping past my mother into the house as if she owned it. You need to leave, I said, my voice dangerously low. Not until you listen, David said, holding up a folded piece of paper. We've all written letters. It was so absurd I almost laughed. They ambushed me in my parents' home to read me letters about my own bad behavior. We miss the old Janice, Jessica said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. The sweet girl you used to be. The doormat, you mean, I corrected her. The girl who took the abuse and never talked back. Fine. You want an intervention? Let's have one. Who's first? David, ever the brave one, stepped forward. He unfolded his letter. Janice, he began reading in a self-important drone. We are worried about the anger you're holding on to. It's not healthy. You need to let go and learn to forgive. Family is the most important thing. I let him get about halfway through before I cut him off. David, I said, are you still 2 months behind on your child support payments to Sarah? Or is it 3 now? He stopped, his face turning beet red. That has nothing to do with this. It has everything to do with this, I snapped. You're standing here reading a letter about family when you barely see your own kids. And anger. You want to talk about anger? Should I call Sarah and ask her about the hole you punched in her wall? The one that finally made her leave you. Don't you dare lecture me on forgiveness. He crumpled the letter in his fist, speechless. I turned to Jessica. Your turn. Jessica, looking shaken, held up her own letter. I just think you're not seeing how much you've hurt Grandma. You should be grateful. She lets you live your life. Grateful. I laughed again, that same ugly sound. Jessica, you're 34 years old and your husband still gives you an allowance. Because you can't be trusted with a credit card. You haven't paid a bill on your own in your entire life. You and David live off of her money, so of course you defend her. You're not her grandchildren. You're her employees. Your job is to enable her cruelty, and you're both very good at it. Jessica burst into tears. Aunt Carol rushed to her side, glaring at me. How could you be so cruel? Now times is funny coming from you, I said, turning my full attention to her. The woman who called me sobbing, pretending my grandmother was dying in a hospital. You used the idea of her death to manipulate me. You are the most two-faced, spineless person I have ever met. You've spent your entire life cleaning up her messes and making excuses for her and for what a little bit of her approval that she'll never give you. You're pathetic. Then I turned to the Viper in the cardigan. She stood there silent, her face a mask of stone-cold fury. All her soldiers were wounded, their little paper swords lying useless on the floor. And you, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. You talk about the ones we've lost. You used Mark against me. You used my daughter against me. You are a cancer. You are a black hole of misery that tries to suck everyone into it. You talk about missing the old me. Well, I'm glad she's gone. She died so I could live. I took a step closer. When Lily died, a part of me died with her. But the part that loved you, the part that made excuses for you, the part that saw you as my grandmother, it died too. As far as I'm concerned, I buried you both on the same day. You are dead to me. Just then the front door opened again. My dad walked in holding a bag of groceries. He stopped dead, taking in the scene, me standing like a general over a battlefield, my cousins in tears, my aunt sputtering, and my grandmother looking like she was about to have a genuine medical emergency this time. My mom just looked at him and said, "They came for an intervention." My dad's face hardened. He dropped the grocery bag on the floor. "Get out," he said, his voice a low growl. I'd only heard a handful of times in my life. "We were just trying to help Janice," Aunt Carol wailed. "Out," he roared, pointing to the door. "All of you, get out of my house. Now." They scrambled. They practically fell over each other, trying to get out the door, a pathetic, sniveling retreat. My dad slammed the door behind them so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. He turned to me, his eyes searching mine. "Are you okay?" I nodded, a slow, deep breath leaving my body. "Yeah, Dad. I am." And for the first time, it was the absolute truth. My mom wrapped me in a hug. "I am so proud of you," she whispered. That night, I blocked their numbers. All of them. I blocked them on social media. I systematically erased every digital path they had to me. The next day, I called my dad's sister, the aunt who had toasted me at the party. I told her everything. Every last ugly detail of the ambush. The news spread through the family like wildfire. The story of the faked hospital visit, which had been a rumor, was now a confirmed fact. The story of the intervention painted them not as concerned relatives, but as a gang of bullies. The tide turned. People who had been neutral were now firmly on our side. My grandmother, for the first time in her life, found herself isolated. Her phone calls went unanswered. Her power, built on a lifetime of fear and manipulation, crumbled to dust because I had simply refused to play her game anymore. I felt nothing. No guilt. No remorse. No sadness. Just a quiet, clean, and beautiful emptiness where all that toxicity used to be. The war was over. I had won.